There we go. Hi everybody, welcome back to the stream. Sorry I'm muted. Lots of recording stuff happening, so my mic goes on and off a lot. How's everyone doing this Wednesday evening? How you doing? Just realized I forgot my hat, so let me grab that quick. Oh, there we go. Better. Much better. Okay. So, it's one of those days. One of those blisteringly hot June Colorado days. It is so hot in here. I can't even take it. It's 90 degrees in this room. I'm losing my mind. So my fan is on full blast. It's not going off if anyone gets bothered by that, unless I record something. And boy, I hope you guys aren't suffering through the same thing. Woo, going pretty well, that's good. That's good. I myself have been having a good day. I think it's because I'm back on Adderall, so a bit more focused there. Makes my chest feel a little funny though. Never a fan of that. No. Canada's great. Yeah, Canada is great. If only it was a real country. I'm currently stripped, sitting on my chair with the fan on, and I'm still hot. Oh my god, I feel the same way. If I didn't have, you know, a stream to do and other people in the house, I'd be in the same position. My god. So, obviously from the title, you can see that today is a video production day. We are going to be working on my ranking video for Realm Reborn dungeons in Final Fantasy XIV. I initially was going to do the boss video first, but I decided dungeons would probably be a better starting off point, because A, bosses would take a lot longer. B, I have yet to redo all the Realm Reborn boss fights, so, you know, have to grab those in there. Haven't decided how to rate trials yet. I don't know if I want to do normal, hard, and extreme, or just the extreme mode, or maybe just all three as one. But for now, dungeons will be a good starting line. My computer just told me to update to Windows 11 with a full screen notification. Oh, I hate those. Would you like to update to Windows 11 with our mandatory update? Oh, you don't want to do our mandatory update. Okay, we'll keep reminding you and take away all the features in the meantime. Good luck, have a fun, nice day. Here's Norton antivirus, doesn't work. Still use it. Oh, you haven't had a single day above 90 degrees? Oh, you're lucky. It's only halfway through the year, and we haven't even hit the real hot months. It's been getting worse every year. The colds have been colder and the hots have been hotter. It's Colorado. It's technically a desert climate, so we get the worst of both. So it's weird. It's a mile-high desert is the best way to put it. You have half of the state is a mountain, and it's always snowy and or, you know, cold. Or it's blisteringly hot, and then the rest is like desert combined with forest and plains and kind of a whole smudge of stuff. And it's all at high altitude, so it's just the strangest weather climate. It's fascinating. It has been a while, Max. How you doing? Yes, my god, first stream I've done on a Wednesday in almost a month. Like, I don't know what happened this last month, but my apologies. Whenever it's super cold here, I'm wearing a skirt and a t-shirt. People ask why I'm cold. I'm just saying, I'm Canadian. Explains everything. But again, it's like saying you're from Neverland. Is it a real thing? Is it a real place? I don't think so. So, they have a cold immunity status buff. Yeah, that's true. Very true. There's not much to really get into besides that. Blizzard says he has an idea, so might as well get into it. Canada's real. Wyoming is fake. Wyoming. Oh my god. Out of all the states, you know, everyone has their reputation, right? Florida is Florida. New York is, well, New York. Alaska is the big, cold Eskimo state. Hawaii is the beautiful place. California is where everything happens. Texas is, everything's bigger in Texas. And Wyoming has the reputation of... That's its reputation. So, yeah, I get it. I mean, Courage the Cowardly Dog literally takes place in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming. That's the type of state you're dealing with. At random truck stop in Wyoming, I found a magnet that says, "My friends went to Wyoming, all I got was this lame magnet." I got 5 of them. You've got good taste. Alright, let's jump into this, shall we? Uh-huh. Cool. Still need to fix that sub bar. I've adjusted it twice and it still hasn't updated, so I'm just gonna give up at this point. Oregonian, the biggest thing we're known for is trees. Not entirely. Yeah, that's true. I was thinking of the idea of doing the Undertale OST tier list while editing the video. Oh. I don't know if I could pull that off. It'll split my concentration because I've got to, you know, work the video at the same time. I mean, we could talk about it, certainly. I'm not opposed to that. Because I was thinking that would probably be my next video anyway, since everyone was excited about that idea. Okay, so let me just make a few adjustments here, just so everyone can see what I'm working on. We can leave the lo-fi on, we can turn it off, it's up to you guys. Kind of a multitasker. Oh no, I totally get it. Does Australia exist? Yes, it does. It's the upgraded version of Britain. It's the evolution of Great Britain. You know, how it goes from Bulbasaur to Venusaur to... no one cares about the middle one. It goes from Great Britain to Australia, so it's totally a real place. Just not as rich. So I looked up what is Oregon known for, went to the first link, and the article is wrong in literally the first sentence. Oh, yeah, it's probably because it's AI generated BS. Google is awful now. Almost every entry on your first page, depending on the result, is going to be an article generated in mass or by AI because they're abusing the SEO stuff. So the real question is whether Texas is hotter than Australia. Ooh. Great question. Because technically Death Valley, the hottest place in the world, is in Australia, right? So I guess it has that going for it. But Australia also has a lot of great sea climate, you know, because, you know, it's surrounded by the ocean. Texas is just a desert surrounded by cacti, filled with cowboys, and has a lot of lakes, granted. It's such a large place, too. It's got the Great Bay, but yeah. Thoughts on Australia. Is Death Valley in California? Oh my god, I thought this whole time it was in Australia. Wow, never mind then. Scratch one interesting fact. Alright, yeah, I'm gonna turn the lo-fi off just because I won't be able to hear the audio if I'm doing this. Okay, let me see if you guys can hear this. That's so interesting! Even the original lore from the Legacy version was far more interesting, as you couldn't spend more than 30 minutes inside the dungeon because the ether was too dense and would drive you mad, as is what happened to the original investigation team as their leader went insane, and then led to the downfall of the entire team. That's really interesting. I would have definitely preferred that, but for some reason it just never made far more interesting. Yeah, hell yeah. Best Australia fact is they lost a war to the emus. Yes, the Great Emu War! Oh my god, if you guys haven't seen videos on the Emu War, I implore you to go find one and watch it as soon as you can. It is such a delightful story that legitimately Australia went to war with their emu population and lost. So that is just so funny. Only in a place like Australia, too. Only with a legendary bird known as the emu could that happen. Okay, let me fix this follow real quick because it's driving me mad. total followers 1591457. Why is it -1? That should be correct. 14591457 it should be a 2. 1459 minus 1457 is 2, not -1. Damn it, streamer bot. I give up. Yeah. Hearing 2 professors is really throwing me off. Okay. So, yeah, let's actually go through the first section real quick and see what you guys think of it. Because the first section is appropriately done. This is the worst of the worst. I haven't added many graphics to it, but this is 1,000 Moz of Total Rock. Essentially what it is. Cool, man, I didn't say Arm Veil. What the hell? Yes, I know, a lot of people probably just disliked the video. But truthfully, when I go through all of the dungeons, there is something about the 1,000 Moz that truly feels futile compared to the others. Yes, Arm Veil is an unpleasant experience, but 1,000 Moz has lost something even more important. Update that video. The original design of 1,000 Moz was far more interesting, if a bit more daunting. It was a sprawling maze that had multiple paths where you would end up at the same location, but could fall into some side rooms that were filled with treasure chests or traps, which is infinitely more interesting than, well, nothing. The bosses, the Crow of Ninetails, were basically just bigger mobs that you had literally just killed, but they were still bosses. And to unlock them, you had to gather photo cells that were scattered through. Missed a transition there, hold on. There we go. We're still bosses. And to unlock them, you had to gather photo cells that were scattered throughout the dungeon. So if you weren't paying attention and weren't gathering them, you'd have to go back and grab them. And then, as soon as you got through the Coral Ninetails, you got to explore the spiderweb section, which would cut you off from your teammates, throw you around, and slow you down with green goo. Oh, and there was so much of it to do. Wish I had higher quality video. All of that has been stripped away. In order to make the duty support system work for this dungeon, since it is a story dungeon, basically everything difficult about the dungeon was removed to make it more straightforward, more linear, more able for NPCs to play. And as a result, the dungeon is essentially just bare bones now. There's almost nothing to it besides moving from room to room to room. And it's not like you have a huge prize waiting for you at the end. It's basically just a giant scorpion fight. Oh, I'm sorry, a Bane Mite fight. It's not even a spider, which would really fit the theme of the dungeon, but I don't know. Granted, this dungeon does have one significant story element, this being the first time you encounter La Habrea, who is the overarching villain of Realm Reborn, and would basically serve as your first real encounter with the Ascian threat, nameless Ascians aside. But the way you get here is pretty lame, as we're trying to track down the Elder Sylph who wandered in here after running away from the Garleans who were beating up the other Sylphs. And we have to come rescue them from a big giant bug who La Habrea pisses off, and, well, enter typical Ascian encounter up to this point here. So it's not really that impressive a story element, and honestly kind of a lame way to encounter our first real Ascian threat, and that doesn't really improve the dungeon itself. And looking at the lore, it's kind of a letdown. 1,000 Moz was just a prison that is no longer a prison after the calamity shut everything down, and now it's just an overrun hive filled with giant bugs. That's it. That's the whole lore. Even the side notes that you can find along the way aren't really that interesting. It's just the field notes of an expedition that was sent in to clear out the 1,000 Moz, and eventually they figure out, yep, we can't do this, time to leave. Oh, cool. That's so interesting. Even the original lore from the legacy version was far more interesting, as you couldn't spend more than 30 minutes inside the dungeon because the ether was too dense and would drive you mad, as is what happened to the original investigation team as their leader went insane, and then led to the downfall of the entire team. That's really interesting. I would have definitely preferred that, but for some reason it just never made the jump. And now we have even less than that. The dungeon was a bit of a pain for new and returning players, granted, and going through all of these alternative hallways, gathering the photocells, the redundant spider webs being slowed down. Overall, it's just not a fun time. Overall, 1,000 Miles was just a unpleasant, uninteresting experience. But with the 6.5 update, some very significant changes were made. The hallways were expanded, and the aesthetic was improved. You can actually see sunshine rays coming in from the roof. The spider web section is no longer that tedious. The goo is gone. All of the alternative hallways have been removed. There's no treasure rooms or trap rooms. But that really kind of moves. Hold on, both of you just said that the audio shattered, so... Where did it break for you guys? I didn't hear that. Is that something I missed? Here, let me play through that section again. It's being slowed down. Overall, it's just not a fun time. Overall, 1,000 Miles was just a unpleasant, uninteresting experience. But with the 6.5 update, some very significant changes were made. The hallways were expanded, the aesthetic was improved. You can actually see sunshine rays coming in from the roof. The spider web section is no longer that tedious. The goo is gone. It's not the volume. And all the alternative hallways have been removed. There's no extra treasure rooms or trap rooms. But that really kind of removes... Oh, you know what? I think I know what it is. There is a... This is bugging me. There was a section at the end of one of my audio lines that got cut off, and I couldn't recover it, but I didn't want to re-record it. Let me see if this is the one. Jin was a bit of a pain for new and returning players, granted, and going through all of these alternative hallways, gathering the photos, experience. But with the 6.5 update, Miles was just a unpleasant, uninteresting experience. But with the 6.5 update, the entire team. That's really interesting. I would have definitely preferred that, but for some reason it just never made the jump. And now we have even less than that. The dungeon was a bit of a pain for new and returning. Even the original lore from the legacy version was far more interesting, as you couldn't spend— We can't do this, time to leave. Oh, cool. That's so interesting. Even the original lore— Never mind. I know that there's a mic place that got cut off, but it's at the end of a very long audio section, so I never bothered to fix it. But I think both of you noticed it, so I'll have to fix it once I re-find it. Nothing. And that is the— It does stand out. Where were we? For as bad as 1,000 from the roof. The spider web section is no longer that tedious. The goo is gone, and all the alternative hallways— Oh, hold on. The volume is peaking around this section. Was it like an extended section that was too loud, or was it the like a moment that it was? Okay. Also, it's playing out of my monitor right now for some reason. So if you hear it in the mic reverb, that might be causing an issue. So, my bad. These have been removed. There's no extra treasure rooms or trap rooms. But that really kind of removes any point to the dungeon. For as bad as 1,000 Miles could be, it was— Oh, gotta add the disclaimer here. Could have been a feedback loop. Yeah, you're probably right. I think that probably was what it was. Okay, I need to add a disclaimer that this footage in particular is not mine, because I don't want anyone accusing me of stealing footage. So this was the only footage I could find of someone running the original version of the dungeon that didn't have their face in it, that didn't have graphics or something else over it, and that was through the whole dungeon. I stole footage? No, I needed footage of the old version of the dungeon because I don't have any, and now I can't get any, so I had to use a reference for how the dungeon used to look. Hence why I took it from this channel called Coyote, because it was literally the only one I could find that actually had the old dungeon in its entirety. Problem is, the resolution is crap. I don't really like this. I really would like a better version, but for now, this is what we'll have to do. Memorable. It had things that people could complain about. It made it unique, and while unique is not necessarily always good, it does stand out and leave an impression. But now 1000 Moz doesn't even have that. 1000 Moz is now just nothing, and that is the biggest sin of all. One of the worst things you can do in video games is waste someone's time. It's the most futile and frustrating feeling. And yes, having a bad part of the game is just as bad. If you have something that is truly frustrating you, it's really just an unpleasant experience. But even these infamous moments carve out a moment in your mind, a memory that you'll probably never forget. But now 1000 Moz doesn't even have that. It will be, from this point on, the least memorable dungeon. And while it may be a main part of the story, I guarantee practically no one will be eager to go back to 1000 Moz of Total Rock. And yes, there are good parts to it. Honestly, the aesthetic is a lot better now. It's no longer claustrophobic. It's shorter, it's linear, it's simple, and it is easy. After all, it's one of the starter dungeons, it's meant to be so. But these things do not save it from what is its ultimate failure, to be incredibly boring to the point that it's almost completely forgettable. It is not enough to have a competent dungeon. You need more than that. You need something to pin it down as, yes, this is a dungeon experience. This is a challenge. But as it stands, you could almost categorize 1000 Moz as one of the guild hests. That's the level that it's dropped to. And that is perhaps the greatest insult that I could give it. That is the level of mediocrity 1000 Moz has reached by being stripped of all of its pointy bits. Granted, they were bad, but taking those away and not replacing them with anything else has laid 1000 Moz bare. Now it is just nothing. A whole long stretch of plain uninteresting gameplay. And as a result, this now stands as the worst dungeon not only in Realm Reborn, but perhaps the entire game as well. Number 30. There we go. Okay, I think that's pretty succinct. I think that's pretty good. I'll fix that audio issue once I found it, but I think that's a pretty solid start. Right, to respond to a couple of your comments, yes, the fact that you skipped all the cutscenes means you have no say on the story elements. Yeah, this is technically the first time we meet La Habrea, which surprised me because I was like, I know we meet an Ascian here, but is it actually La Habrea? It is. And this is like, he does exactly the same thing the other Ascians have up to this point. He summons a big monster and leaves you to deal with it, which is like big whoop, right? The second one where we meet him is a lot better, I agree. And dungeon wise, for that encounter to be here is just such a letdown. So, and yeah, hallways, there's nothing more boring than hallways, especially when they're the same hallway over and over again. Oh man. That's the thing about 1000 Moz. Like, everybody picks Armvale as the worst. Yeah, that's a really negative experience. That's never a good time. But 1000 Moz isn't even that. It doesn't have an experience. It's just nothing. So that's why I picked it as the worst one. Now for the next one. I don't think I need to update much here. I kind of wanted to put in like a 31,000 Moz, but I kind of accomplished that with the title screen here, so I don't think I'll add that. But I do want to add a little blurb here. Has anyone watched Shafrillis Productions? I don't know if I pronounced that right. I love the way he does his ranking graphics, so I was thinking of doing something similar to that, where we have just a big old number here, a little meme, and then we go to the description. I just don't know what meme to do. I need 31 different memes, Final Fantasy 14 related, and I only have 2, so I'll need to come. Oh no, I have 3. I have 3 now, so I have to come up with a couple more. Let's do that real quick. Let's put in our Text right here. Where do I say 30? Bottom of the list. And I might just surprise you. Number 31. Probably get that a bit more breathing room. I don't even think I need to say 31. I think I could just display it and that'll be fine. Because I have 3 ideas right now. Such Intention. This was not my devastation, but I want to save that for Praetorium. Prey Return to the Waking Sands. I don't know. I'm feeling like that could be a last place one, but not necessarily. And the third one was something from the Twinning, because people love the Twinning music. But that's all I've got, so... What is the last place boss? Tyrant. From Pharos Sirius, the Lighthouse. I don't know if you've ever done that dungeon. It wasn't a main story dungeon. Praetorium should be a nuclear bomb that says such devastation. Oh, you know what? I kind of like that because then I could use such intention for the castrum. Because they're both basically the same thing, right? I mean, a Lydia meme would also work. The reason Tyrant is the worst boss is because you literally kill him in 5 seconds. Like, not even a joke. You go into the arena, you start attacking him, and he's dead in 3 to 5 seconds. I could not believe such a boss existed in the game. He's not even a mob. He's not even a mini boss that appears during your ad phase. He literally has his own arena. You go in there. He's a third boss in a 4-boss dungeon for some reason, because most dungeons are 3 bosses, but he's a third. He's just a boss in between the last boss for some reason, and he's so weak. And to confirm it, I went back in by myself to let him do his mechanic while I just sat there to see if he had anything. He doesn't. How early game? He's like Pharos Sirius, which is like, that's like a level 30 something dungeon, I think. So, Praetorium was my biggest fear because I couldn't skip the cutscenes. Yeah, that is the #1 tragedy for scene cutters. Okay, let's get this 31 going. We're going to use my favorite font, 8-bit Operator Plus SC Bold. You mean the movie? So yeah, Tyrant is just a weird one. Honestly, it's kind of cheating to pick him as the last one, but he is absolutely the worst dungeon boss, without question. If I had to pick one before the update, it was Lydia. There is no question. I think everyone in the game would agree with me that before the update in 6.5, the worst boss in the game was Lydia, because it was such a joke of a mechanic, of a boss. And this was the lead up and payoff for an enemy we've been wanting to punch in the face for like half the Realm Reborn. She's the one in the white armor. I don't know if you remember her. She was one of Gaius's commanders. You probably fought her before the update came out. You had to face her in her magic tech, where you had to use cannons to hurt her, which made no sense because you literally had just destroyed a magic tech armor earlier in that dungeon. Doesn't ring a bell. She doesn't make much of an impact, honestly. And if you don't watch the cutscenes, you wouldn't know who she is. So, I'm sure there's a large-sized boss somewhere in the game. Yeah! Which one would you like to pick? Kraken is a good-sized boss, but he's small compared to what comes later. Steps of Faith. Biggest dragon by far. Technically, Midgard Zormer is larger, but you don't face the whole thing, so it doesn't really count. Multiple bosses turn into giant forms. Who would be the biggest boss by scale? Ooh, let me think about that real quick as I make this bigger. Just a big old ugly 31. Titan Max? No, he's a big boss, but, you know, again, a lot of giant bosses. So I'm just thinking, because so many bosses go giant, they're all about the same size. Like their torso hangs over the stage. That's kind of like the default giant size. Oh yes, absolutely, Sue. By all means, let me get you that next permashub. Let's do it. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, brother. Yay! I got a sub! The sub bar finally updated. Better be one.
Professor_Phoenix gifted a tier 1 sub to Soup 421.
Still works. Still need to find a way to control that, but... Okay, so meme for 31. I think for now I'm going to do Prey Return to the Waking Sands. I think that is... Everybody hates that phrase. I think that's a good place to start. So, but I don't have that clip right now, so I'm going to save it. So we'll just move on. We're also going to color this red because it's at the bottom. Yeah. Yeah. One of those dragons. Nidhogg and what's his name? Praise Felgar are pretty big. They're huge, but the Steps of Faith dragon is bigger. I keep going back to him as the biggest boss you fought. Yeah, I cannot think of a bigger boss. I think they're ramping up to do a giant boss in Dawn Trail. They've been teasing this big dragon thing that's like the size of a pyramid. At least you can see in the screenshot. So people are really hyped for it and think this might be the biggest boss in 14 history, but we'll see. Okay, so we're going to copy that. Move on to the next section. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Okay. I'll put that right here. Nothing in the way. Perfect. You are 30. I'll do the color of the tier. Oh, I should put the tier as well. How should I do that? I guess another text is fine. So this is technically F tier. Right, this is the stupid tier. I mean, it can summon it. No, it looks like it's just a big monster in the area. It looks like we're going to hunt it as part of the story. So, oh no, I did the wrong thing. That's F tier. Okay. The stupid tier. That's my nickname for the F tier here. Because they really are just so dumb. I'm happy with that. And we'll copy that. I might talk about the tiers before I go into it, but for now, this'll do. And yeah, I don't think I even need my voice here, and I don't want it to be that long. Like, that's about as long as I'd want it. So, ba-ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba, black. The 1,000 Maws of Toto Rock. Oh man, I didn't say. Pretty good. Okay. And we can always increase the size based on the meme. So, cool beans. All right, we got that transition down. Oh crap. Yeah, I'm gonna take out the numbers. I think saying the numbers is inelegant. I just don't need to do it. All right, end of the dungeon. Perhaps the entire game as well. 30. Okay. All right, now for number 30, the Tom Tara Deepcroft. Oh, I should probably move this whole thing back. Okay, nothing separated. We're good. Yeah. My editing style is probably a bit inefficient. I put the whole thing in and I cut it as I go. But that means that I typically have a giant bubble I have to move every time. Too long. And then that's the theme music. Cool. Move that up here. The Tom Tara Deepcroft. Oh my god, I still haven't said Armvale. What the hell's going on? Yes, I know. I can't believe Armvale is not yet on this list, and don't worry, we'll get to it. But really think about Tom Tara Deepcroft. This is one of the first 3 dungeons that the gamer plays. These are the dungeons that really think about Tom Tara Deepcroft. First transition. I think this will be our standard start of dungeon. There's not much to show off in Deepcroft. This is a really short one, so I think I actually have to re-record it. Think about Tom Tara Deepcroft. This is one of the first 3 dungeons that the gamer plays. These are the dungeons that are introducing you to the unnecessary gap. I want to re-record as little as possible, so let's see what we can salvage. These are the dungeons that are introducing you to the concept of dungeons, and they're done back to back to back. Tom Tara being the second one in Gridania. Unnecessary pause. Zoom in. By the way, if you want to talk about Undertale music, first question you have to ask, what is the worst song in all of Undertale and Deltarune? So just brew on that in the back of your mind, because you can always talk about what the best music is, but you got to tell me what's the worst. And then once you've established the bars, then you can start ranking everything else. You're really not a fan of Muffet's? Really? You don't like Muffet's theme? Like the boss music? Or just her theme? Does she have a theme? Man, I really love the boss music for Spider Dance. Oh, I love Spider Dance. Wow, I've never heard anyone say they hate Spider Dance. That's crazy. Yeah, no sound effects, obviously. That would be that wouldn't really count. That's a fire take. Yeah, no kidding. Set you on fire take. Yeah. And the lore of this place is interesting enough. It's a giant sprawling tomb underneath the forest. I will agree that it's overrated. I don't think it's one of the best, but I do love it. I think it's got a nice kind of high energy kind of thing. I think people use it a lot and say that, oh yeah, this is the same as Hopes and Dreams. Same as Megalovania. It's like, no, it's like at least B tier, maybe A tier, but it's not S tier. Come on. You sent the FF14 memes. Oh yes, thank you. Let's see what you got. Cause I experienced the memes, but I don't memorize them, so this is definitely helpful. Let's see what we got. I also need a lot of audio ones for sure. Experienced player trying to explain mechanics again after third wipe. Slow Sprout, I like your funny words, cat man. Oh, that makes me laugh. Oh. Let's see. Geese in a V formation, Tankly in the way. So where are we going? We're following you. Okay, yeah, I like that one. That's really good look of horror on the Geese's face. That's really good. Oh my god. Oh, we have to have something with Tataru Taru. She's got to have one of these memes. Oh, I wonder how I could represent that with audio. Oh, that's so funny. Or maybe I could just put the meme and then maybe just a little audio thing. Like, there's probably meme music in FF14 I could use. I mean, I could just do Mandaril the whole way through. I love it. Day 1 of tanking. Is my tank danced on? When do I use my cooldown? Should I grab that next pack? Quietly memorize this mechanics as if I'm leading everyone. What abilities do I do again? I hope we're not going too slow. Day 2 of tanking. I am fat, but my pulls are fatter. Let's frickin' do this! Awesome. Are there any other closest fastest tyrant? Close? Yes, actually. Keeper of Halidom comes to mind. First boss in Wanderer's Palace. Also the second boss in Wanderer's Palace, the giant Bavaroi. They're both so fast. It's kind of ridiculous how fast that dungeon as a whole goes. Let me review my list real quick. Captain Madison from Sastasha. Literally one of the fastest fights in the game. The Manor Claviger from Hawk Manor. Curl of Ninetails is actually my second to last boss in ranking because it's literally just a mob that has a little bit more health. It's not fast, but it is easy. Fastest fight besides those. Man, those are really fast fights too. Firemane, first boss in Halatali, probably the fastest normal boss in the game. You can kill that sucker so fast. You don't even have to touch his mechanic. There's a lot of bosses where that's true, but his mechanic happens really quickly and you can still kill him really fast. So yeah. Ah, so many early dungeons that have just such fast, easy bosses. I don't even like the song that much. I don't know what my character's name now is a mystery to me. Hotel California, yeah. That's a good question. Q, hey pal, do you have to wait at the back of the line? Shows, what is that? What is that? What is he holding? Green. A healer. Oh, they do have a healer. Oh, you have a healer. Front of the line, please. Yes, yes. Oh, that's so annoying when you party up with a healer or tank and you get ahead of everyone who's been waiting for an hour. Oh, that, yeah. Oh my god! Minfilia's dress. Oh my god. That's awesome. Congratulations, we are going fast. Please do not resist. Oh, God. Wait, what? Oh, yep. Black Mage getting rescued. How long does it take to get to Tyrant? To get to Tyrant, you have to go through 2 pretty stiff bosses, to be fair. That's why it's so weird. The first boss, what's his name? No, Simon the Unsinkable and Zoo are really tough bosses, and they can absolutely crush you. So, to actually get through them and through the rest of Pharaoh's series, to get to Tyrant will take you at least a good 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how many times you wipe. And then Tyrant, whoop, done. And then the boss is literally up the stairs. It's like, why is this boss here? It doesn't make sense. Let's be sure it's done. Oh my god, I've done so much research, Blizzard. I've gone through all the lore of every dungeon just to make sure I didn't miss anything, because I know that a lot of these dungeons have like these secret things about them I don't want to miss. So I've so much underneath the forest. But when you really get in there and analyze it, Unnecessary gap. Those are all good memes. I just don't know how to incorporate them into the video. Like, I could put a picture of them. Like, I think I could really get away with that goose one, but I need something to go with it, you know? But when you really get in there and a giant sprawling tomb underneath the forest. But when you really get in there and analyze it, this is kind of a lame dungeon. It's incredibly short and but you wanted to ranking a meme next to it. I should probably have clarified. I need an audio meme playing, like, if you've seen Shay Frillis, he always plays like a little audio joke, but I don't want to copy him 100%. So putting a visual meme actually would be a great idea because, you know, audio memes are so difficult to find. Oh, so if I, besides, it's always interesting, right? Just seeing the number, you got to make it interesting somehow. And a meme would help. So I'm going to use at least 2 of those for sure. I'm researching string theory, black holes, the Big Bang, time travel, the fourth dimension, and the universe before the Big Bang for an English class project. My brain is exploded. Yep, sounds about right. Yeah. Once you start getting into like the end game of current knowledge, physics knowledge, it gets wacky, dude. Need help? DM me. Indeed. I know a lot about it as well. Probably not enough to help with a class project. I can help clarify things if you ever need help. So yeah, I'm always a font of knowledge. Incredibly simple, and granted, the aesthetic of it is actually pretty nice. There's a giant glowing shadow sphere in the center. The cultists are. It's incredibly short and incredibly simple, and granted, the aesthetic of it is actually pretty nice. Right there. Okay, so now we'll switch to the shadow sphere shot, which I have somewhere. Also need to switch that footage somewhere in between. Where are you? Here. Yeah, there we go. I don't want to replace anything. That's fine. I'm not replacing nothing. I shouldn't have any footage playing for more than like Tara Deepcroft. This is one of the first 3 dungeons that the gamer plays. These are the dungeons that are introducing you to the concept of dungeons, and you also do the Raton Arsena copy pasta. Raton? I don't know that one. Ratotin. Ratoton. Fits a giant sprawling tomb underneath the forest. But when you really get in there and analyze it, this is kind of a lame dungeon. It's incredibly short and incredibly simple. And granted, the aesthetic of it is actually pretty nice. There's a giant glowing shadow sphere in the center. The cultists are trying to empower it and summon a dark god. Nice. There's a giant glowing shadow. Nice. There's a giant glowing shadow sphere in the center. Granted, the aesthetic of it is actually pretty nice. There's right around there. Okay, then we'll do a transition here. Kind of just filler. Seeing you to the concept of dungeons, and they're done back to back to back. Tamtara being the second one in Gridania. And should I reference Copperbell Mines and Sastasha here? Would be interesting to look at. Probably not worth it though. The lore of this place is interesting enough. It's a giant sprawling tomb underneath the forest. But when you really get in there and analyze it, this is kind of a lame dungeon. Cut more. And there's not a lot of footage to use for this place. It really is just such a It's just such a boring dungeon with not a lot to show for it. I was struggling to find anything useful in the footage I captured, so. But when you really get in there and analyze underneath the forest, but when you really get in there and analyze it, this is kind of a lame dungeon. It's incredibly short and incredibly simple. And granted, the aesthetic of it is actually pretty nice. There's a giant glowing shadow sphere in the center. The cultists are trying to empower it and summon a dark god. And, you know, the tomb aspect is always a solid pick if you want to go for a spooky, solid investment. Wait, hold on. Cultists are trying to empower it and summon a dark god. And, you know, the tomb aspect is always a solid pick if you want to go for a spooky, solid investment. But at this point, tombs are overplayed and really need to stand out in order to really be a solid pick. The circular design of Tamtara is a bit more interesting, and you don't really see that in any other dungeon from... Okay, fair enough. Solid pick if you want to go for a... Tamtara is a dungeon from this... That's it. That's really a positive thing. I would say that out of all the dungeons in Realm Reborn, even including Thousand Maws, Tamtara... And, you know, the tomb aspect is always a solid pick if you want to go for a spooky, solid... Yeah, because literally every spot in this dungeon looks the same. Out in order to really... The tomb aspect is always a solid pick if you want to go for a spooky, solid investment. But at this point, tombs are overplayed and really need to stand out in order to really be a solid pick. The circular design of Tamtara... Okay, right there. I need to talk about the circular design. So I need a shot of the circular design. Where the heck do I do that? I only took like one circular shot. Where's that one haunted house coming? That's Hawk Manor. That's... The ranking is in the Final Fantasy discussion, by the way, if you want to look at the whole list. Hawk Manor, I think I gave it like a pretty low ranking because it looks good, but it's an early dungeon. It plays like an early dungeon, and the bosses are god-awful. Like, 2 of the worst bosses in the game come from this. You literally do nothing but burn the bosses down in Hawk Manor. The final boss, Lady Amandine, she's okay. You know, charm mechanic, that's the first time you encounter that. And of course the aesthetic is really cool. But relative to all the other dungeons, by that point, it's the best dungeon. But after you see every other dungeon Realm Reborn, you're like, oh, it's not as good as it could be. You know, especially when they did the hard mode, that's a great dungeon. That's one of the best in the game. So, all the hard mode dungeon, almost all of the hard mode dungeons are stellar because they actually make you work for it, you know. Okay, there's got to be a good shot here somewhere of that circular design. Oh, it's just not a... Literally, this is one of my biggest problems with this dungeon. Literally, every single part of this dungeon is the same! There's nothing different. Fight to fight to fight. Okay, this is where I looked at the soul sphere for a little bit. Oh, okay, let's zoom out a little bit. It's taking too long. I think I need one of the first shots. I think that's my only chance. They're just harder mobs. Once you beat it, you move on. That's not really a boss. I believe Armvale is not yet on this list, and don't worry, we'll get to it. But really think about Tamtara Deepcroft. This is one of the first 3 dungeons that the gamer plays. These are the dungeons that are introducing you to the concept of dungeons, and they're done back to back to back. Hold on, let me extend this footage. See if I got a good look. Moz, Tom Tara feels all the dungeons in Realm Reborn, even including 1000 Moz, Tom Tara feels like the least of a dungeon. At the very least, 1000 Moz is getting you better than what I have, so it'll have to do. The best circular shot I've got. I guess I could go back through and take an exhibition. The circular design of Tom Tara is a bit more interesting, and you don't really see that in any other dungeon from this point on. But literally no point. That's it. That's really all I can say about this. That is a positive to stand out in order to really be a solid pick. The circular design of Tom Tara. Right, cross dissolve. Is a bit more interesting, and you don't really see that in any other dungeon from this point on. But that's it. That's really all I can say about this. That is a positive thing. Hold on, that audio's not great. The circular design of Tom Tara is a bit more interesting, and you don't really see that in any other dungeon from this point on. But that's it. That's really all I can say about this. That is a positive thing. I gotta get that gap gone. A positive thing. Yeah. I was doing this all in one breath. It's the way I record. It's such a bad habit of mine. Is a positive thing. What about the one dungeon with the big creature who would fire a big laser and you had to hide on the side extension of the platform? Oh, that's Amarat. That is Shadowbringers. And that is one of the best dungeons, if not the best dungeon in the game. I think if you were to ask most Final Fantasy 14 players what their favorite dungeon is, they would pick that. Oh my god, Amarat is just... I cannot wait to rate Amarat. Holy smokes, dude. It's so good. I could geek out about Amarat for days. So good. Speaking of which, I just got a rumbly in my tummy. So I'm gonna take a bite of my sandwich real quick. Yeah, Shadowbringers as a whole may just have the best content in the game, bar none. Like, maybe Endwalker has better, like, conclusion and a better finale, and definitely more emotions. But wow, Shadowbringers. From the moment you face... Basically from the moment you ascend Mount Golg to the end of the story, Shadowbringers is like legendary tier. It's crazy how good the ending of Shadowbringers is. And Amarat is the piece de la resistance. People cheer every time Amarat comes up in the roulette. Yeah. Emmett Silk, best villain for sure. I'll have to do a character ranking eventually too. Shadowbringers, yeah! Still best theme song, still the best one. Like, yeah, Endwalker makes me emotional and nostalgic every time I listen to it. But Shadowbringers hypes you up. It makes you feel like it is time for the epic showdown. Let's go! You know, that's the feeling Shadowbringers gives you. So yeah, totally in agreement there. Yes. Hardest boss tier list. Yeah. So, I was thinking about it. I think the only reasonable way that I can rank all these bosses and trials and raids is to do them myself. Which means I'm going to have to do all the savage fights. Which just like, oh, that's going to be quite a challenge. It's going to take a while. So I'll definitely have to wait before I rank like the harder stuff. Like I probably couldn't do Shadowbringers or Endwalker stuff right now. So I'll have to do it one expansion at a time. Otherwise, I'll never be able to pull it off. Speaking of hardest bosses, I did a lot of Puggant with my specialty care provider because he was a gamer. Was funny and awkward. I would imagine that'd be awkward. Oh. I want to see Eden's Gate Sepulture. Boy. Yeah. Titan Maximum. Can't wait to do that. That's not even the hardest one in the Eden series. I think that I hear that the Shiva fight is actually harder than that one, so I'll be very interested to see how that goes. That is a positive thing. Tom Tara has a lot unnecessary gap. Tom Tara has a lot not going for it. A positive thing. Tom Tara has a little bit of a gap. It is a positive thing. Tom Tara has a lot not going for it. It has some things going for it, but a lot more not going for it. That's just a terrible, terrible line. What am I saying here? Tom Tara has a lot not going for it. It has some things going for it, but a lot more not going for it. I would say that out of all the dungeons in Realm Reborn, even including 1000 Maws, Tom Tara feels like the least of a dungeon. Ooh. At the very least, 1000 Maws is getting you boss after boss after boss.
I have to, yeah,
a typical
I have to
3-boss structure. It's very effective and it works. But Tom Tara doesn't give you that. It gives you 3 shadow orbs that you have to shut down. Because of everything I said in the 1000 Maws thing, none of that applies anymore. I can't use any of that. But Tom Tara doesn't give you that. It gives you something about this that is a positive thing. Dungeon from this point on. But that's it. That's really all I can say about this that is a positive thing. I mean, I'm not crazy about that ending either. I kind of want to on. But that's it. That's really all I can on. But that's it. That's really all I can. Yeah, I'm going to cut it off right here. We're going to record new audio here. So I want to talk about how it relates to being a guild hest, and why it's better than 1000 Maws. But before I do, let me review the rest of the audio, see where what else is mentioned. But Tom Tara doesn't give you that. It gives you 3 shadow orbs that you have to shut down, each guarded by a void soul counter. Faux pas. Let me verify that. Stuttering. Oh yeah, I researched that. Let me verify that. Soul counter. I stopped in the middle of my recording to make sure there was actually 3 soul counters. There are. So don't need that. Such a professional. But these aren't really bosses. The game and the wikis list them as such, but I cannot in good conscience call them bosses. They're just harder mobs. They spawn after all the mobs are gone. They have a wide AoE attack, and that's really it. They're really not that much more difficult. They're just a spawn after all the mobs are gone. They have a wide AoE attack, and that's really it. They're really not that much more difficult. A wide AoE attack, and that's really it. Unnecessary gap. Wide AoE attack, and That's really it. They're really not that much more difficult. They're just a little stiffer to beat. And that's it. Once you beat it, you move on. That's not really a boss. There's nothing new to do with void soul counters. Come on. Or soul counters. With void soul count. Oh, now I have to fix that. Void soul count. I think it's right here. Or I hate when I stutter. I have such a nervous tick when it comes to my stutter. Void soul counters. And you do with void soul counters, and you have to beat 3 of them in a row to get to the final boss. Much like the Cruella Ninetales, it just feels like a waste of time. But at least the Cruella Ninetales had a mechanic going with it that they were trying to introduce. Here, it's just kill another mob. I can't in good conscience accept that as a boss. The stuttering. Yeah, I stutter. When I get, what's the word? I guess excitable when I talk, my mind goes ahead of my mouth and I end up slurring and talking over myself, so I stutter. And I hate when I do that. It always makes me nervous when that happens. I know literally nobody cares, but kill another mob. I can't in good conscience. A little bit more of a gap. Here it's just kill another mob. I can't in good conscience a little bit more. Mob. I can't in good conscience accept that as a boss. And the final boss, necessary. Stir all the time too, so I guess hearing from you isn't noticeable for me. Probably right. And my siblings tell me all the time, we literally never notice it, but I always think about every word I say, so I'm constantly obsessing over everything I say, so I always notice it. Boss. And the final boss, Galvanth the Dominator, granted is a bit cool. I mean, who doesn't like a good mind flayer? Okay, so this is where we'll drop the Galvanth fight. Where is that footage? Wow, I have a lot of useless footage here. This is so much useless footage. One of the many fruits found throughout the room. The problem is there's not that many, so you have to space it out. So if you eat a fruit with every stack, you're going to run out and you're going to die. Let's see. Make the most sense. Let me cut this in half and then we'll port it over. No, don't. Dang it. See, moving the clips by themselves is such a pain. I always forget I should unlink the clips so I don't have to move the audio with it. Because I'm not actually going to use the audio for my footage. I literally just need the video. I always forget that. Okay, so... it is actually pretty nice. There's a giant glowing shadows. I can't in good conscience accept that as a boss. And the final boss to deal with. And the final boss, Galvanth the Dominator, granted is a bit cool. I mean, who doesn't like a good mind flayer design? And his invincibility mechanic is at least something new that the player has to deal with. But it's really just a no-nonsense fight. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and much like the Cruella Ninetales, it just... oh, you know what I should do? Instead of putting that with the that statement, I should put the fight footage there, and I'll put the cinematic footage with the okay, yeah, because the intro shot has the best roundabout footage, so I can use that with my roundabout part, and then I can move the other footage where I need it to go. Sorry, just thinking ahead of myself. Let me just deal with that real quick. So I'll use this for the Galvant statement. That's really it. They're really not that much more difficult. They're on. That's not really a boss. There's nothing new to do with Void Soul Cap. Cool. I mean, who doesn't like a good Mind Flayer design? I can't in good conscience accept that as a boss. And the final right around here, boss, Galvant the Dominator, granted, is a bit cool. I mean, who doesn't like a good Mind Flayer design? Will save me. And his invincibility mechanic is at least something new that the player has to deal with. But it's really just a no-nonsense fight. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and really nothing to worry about. I mean, he casts water of all spells. That's not really something to worry about. It's like the perfect footage to use there. I like it. This is one of the few dungeons that a blue mage can get through almost entirely by themselves with no effort. That's how easy this is. Should I bring up the blue mage aspect? I don't think I should, because that depends on what type of blue mage you're using. This is one of the few dungeons that a blue mage can get through almost entirely by themselves with no effort. That's how easy this is. Yeah, that's a nothing statement. That is quite literally useless in this context. Because if you have a leveled up blue mage with every spell, you would blow through every dungeon. No problem. And that is why Tamtara falls so far down the list. It may have some things that are interesting, and I'm like, oh cool, that's a fun shadow orb, but that's it. I just turn my mind off for the rest of the dungeon, and I think that's true for a lot of other people as well. In researching the overall opinion of people when it comes to all of these dungeons, well, in research... Okay, a little bit of audio fix here. I also do a lot of pauses because I'm thinking about the next thing I'll say. I don't want to say something wrong, so I just go, then I speak. The pause, yeah. In researching the overall opinion of people when it comes to all, because my mindset is that when I'm recording, I don't want to make any mistakes. I would rather create pauses that I can eliminate than put in words that are nonsense and I have to redo the whole thing. So, for these dungeons, Tamtara often found itself on negative lists. And I think that's because people in general just don't appreciate a dungeon like this that's far... Little audio blip there. What's happening here? Oh, I think I ran out of breath. I had to take a quick inhale. See if we can't get rid of that. Dungeon like, don't need that first bit. Dungeon like, yeah, there we go. Create a dungeon like this that's far too simple and far too devoid of content. A dungeon like this that's far too simple and far too devoid of... I don't need that second far too. I can actually remove that whole bit and it'll work better. It's called Frankensteining. Too simple and devoid of content. I literally removed half of my sentence and I still made it feel like I didn't. That's far too simple and devoid of content. Perfect. Then that's why it falls down this low. Content. Then that's content. Then that's why it falls down this low. Number 29. Oh, that's it. That's my ending. Oh, okay. That's not an ending. Then that's why it falls down this low. Yeah, I want to redo that. Okay, so that's the ending part. So let me go ahead and grab Galvant's death. That's always the easiest way to put any dungeon, is just death footage. Well, I guess I grabbed the whole thing. And that is why Tom Tara falls. Copy. And we'll just go until the finale. Right here. To come up with a better ending phrase, but dungeon like this that's far too simple and a little more. It's far too simple and devoid of content. Okay, I'll need to come up with a better ending to fit that footage, but there we go. We'll make that fade out. We're going to get this out of the way, and that's our ending. Okay, and then we have the boss
to deal
footage.
with.
But it's really just a no-nonsense fight. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and really nothing to worry about. I mean, he casts water of all spells. That's not really something to worry about. And then I had this whole section about the blue mage that I took out. I might just want to move on. Do I fill anything with this, or just... And that is why Tom Tara falls so far down the list. It may have some things that are interesting. This is just more boss fight footage. Okay, yeah, so we'll get rid of that. Grab all the audio, move that over. We can have this fill up a good portion, I suppose. This will be right. Work with me here. Right there. And I think that's because people in general just don't appreciate a dungeon like this that's far too simple and devoid of content. Oh, I see. Number 29. Okay. Dungeon like this that's far too simple and devoid of content. Let's do that a bit more. Overall opinion of people when it comes to all of these dungeons, Tom Tara often found itself on negative lists. And I think that's because people in general just don't appreciate a dungeon like this that's far too simple and devoid of content. And that is why Tom Tara falls so far down the list. It may have some things that are interesting, and I'm like, oh cool, that's a fun shadow orb, but that's it. I just turn my mind off for the rest of the dungeon, and I think that's true for a lot of other people as well. In researching the overall opinion of people when it comes to all of these dungeons, Tom Tara often found itself... I could use that for the tomb line. I'm actually going to do that. Hold on. Link, destroy the audio. We'll move that out of the way. I think this is good footage for the lead up to the end. People as well. In researching the overall opinion of people when it comes to all of these dungeons, Tom Tara often found itself on negative lists. And I think that's because people in general just don't appreciate a dungeon like this that's far too simple and devoid of content. Okay, cool. So we'll move this over for the tomb comment. This will be. My God, I still haven't said arm veil. What the hell's going on? Yes, I know. Which comes up. I can't believe. Actually, let's have that as part of the footage.
Oh, and yeah, say, no, no, it's like the way we're on this new place. Still, Veil, what the hell?
Here we go. So I don't like. How long is it? Oh, it's going to be well over an hour. Like I need to put at least a good couple minutes for every dungeon talking about it, and there's 31 dungeons, so that full ranking videos are going to be a while, and I think that is just my style. I cannot downsize it any further. I mean, I can blaze right through dungeons like this when there's not much to talk about, but otherwise I want to explain thoroughly why my stuff is there. So, and if you want to do a full ranking, you have to talk about them all. I can't just say, oh, 29, blah, move on. I gotta explain, well, this is why it's blah. The aesthetic of it, currently my audio track is around 4 hours, but that's because I did so many retakes. I really gotta cut it down. It is actually pretty nice. There's a giant glowing shadows. I believe Armvale is not yet on this list, and don't worry, we'll get to it. But really think about Tom Tara Deepcroft. This is one of the first 3 dungeons. I can't believe Armvale. Okay, yeah. We'll use this for the roundabout statement. Better the dungeon, the more you have to talk about. Exactly, right? Because I'm going to have so much to say about those top dungeons. I think people actually like long videos like this. When it comes to rankings, I think people are starting to watch a lot more of these long form videos, especially because you can have it on in the background when you do other stuff, and I think people like to do that too. And I've got a good background voice, so exactly, yeah, exactly. You get it, you got it. Shorten that. We're gonna move that over. We're gonna make that the full statement. We'll just use Galvan's entrance as part of the Tom Tara introduction. Oh, I can't believe Armvale is not yet on this list, and don't worry, we'll get to it. But really think about. Oh, that gives me a lot of flexibility too. Now I can just move all these back a little bit. I believe Armvale is not yet on this list, and don't worry, we'll get to it. But really think about Tom Tara Deepcroft. This is one of the first 3 dungeons that the gamer plays. These are the dungeons that Tom Tara Deepcroft. This is one of the first 3 dungeons that the gamer plays. These are the dungeons that are introduced. Cool. And then we transition to this footage. Cross dissolve here. These are the dungeons that are introducing you to the concept of dungeons, and they're done back to back to back. Tom Tara being the second one in Gridania.
Yeah, that's what I should do.
And the
for
lore
all
of
the
this
dungeon
place is
intros.
interesting enough. It's a giant sprawling tomb underneath
It's always
the
awkward
forest.
to fit in
When
the
we
boss
really get
intro,
in there and analyze it,
and there's not
this is
else
kind of a
way to
lame
talk about it.
dungeon. It's incredibly short and incredibly simple. And granted, the aesthetic of it is actually pretty nice. There's a giant glowing shadow sphere in the okay, so we need to shorten that to here. Aesthetic of it is actually pretty nice. There's a giant glowing shadow sphere in the center.
Later.
The
thanks for the
cultists are
memes, I
trying
appreciate
to
'em.
empower it and
think
summon
I'll
a
use some of
dark
'em.
god. And you know, the
enjoy
tomb
dinner.
aspect is always a solid pick if you want to go for a spooky, solid investment. But at this point, tombs are overplayed. Yes, this is where I needed to put that in. So, oh, hold on. We're going to move this over. We're going to put that in. 'cause this is a good showcase of the tomb right here. Solid investment. But at this point, tombs are overplayed and really need to stand out in order to really be a solid pick. The circular design of Tamtara is a bit more interesting. And this is where we would talk about the circular design. The circular design of Tamtara is a bit more interesting, and you don't really see that in any other dungeon from this point on. But that's it. Little less off the top of that. And then let it go for a little longer. Well, I can't because it's got the title in it. Tara is a bit more interesting, and you don't really see that in any other dungeon from this point on. Shame that's the only footage I can use. That in any other dungeon from this point on. But that's it. And then we can go right back into regular footage. And I have a lot of regular footage. And from this point on. But that's it. What? Oh, that's right. I cut it out because I didn't like, because I started talking about it has a good thing, but it's not, that's a bad thing because it doesn't have a lot of things going for it. It has a lot of things not going for it. It's just, that's nonsense. So I'll have to re-record. Okay, so here I wanted to talk about how it feels like a guild hest, which I have footage for, and how it doesn't feel like a dungeon, which is the same problem Thousand Maws had. So let's set up a recording. I love Resolve. It's such a simple process. Okay. So voiceover, input, microphone, patch, prepare for recording, test. Is it playing my voice twice? I don't think so. I can't hear it. If it's playing twice, I apologize. Let's test a little something. In fact, I'm gonna mute. I'll mute Resolve for now, just so you guys don't hear a dual thing. Okay, here we go. Oh, maybe I'm not hearing it now because my voice is going to OBS first. Let's see how this works out. I might not be able to record audio while I'm streaming. Test. Does the mic pick me up? Let's see. Nope, it's not picking it up. So I play that back. Test. Does the mic pick me up? Oh no, it's picking it up. Let's see. Nope, it's not picking it up. I just can't hear it. Why is it so quiet? Isaac, how's it going? How is your day? What kind of math we're going to learn? Today's math is about editing math. It's all about get rid of that double voice real quick. Today's math is all about which number is higher, 30 or 31, and which dungeon goes where for those numbers. It's all about rankings, you see. One of the most important numbering systems out there. What is first and what is not first. I can't wait to learn. This is my 100th day plus. Indeed, I'm going to test you later. There's 1 to 31 dungeons. I'll need to know which one is which. Tell me now. Okay, let me go back to the edit tab real quick. Why can I not hear this audio? Is it really that quiet? Oh, it's not picking it up. It's so quiet for some reason. I turn that up. But that's it. Test, test, test. Does the mic pick me up? Let's see. That's weird. I don't know why it's doing that. But at least it's just a volume thing. I can always replace the volume. Okay, statement. Here I want to talk about the guild hest. Oh, I should probably turn off my fan if I'm recording. Just for a little while. Oh, better hurry this up. Okay. That's it. One of the biggest failings about this dungeon is that it doesn't feel like a dungeon. Just like Thousand Maws before it, it feels very much just like an extended guild hest because there's not really a challenge here. Granted, the final boss is a lot better than a guild hest would offer you, and it actually does feel like a dungeon because you're going through a unique environment, unlike a guild hest and unlike Thousand Maws, but that just really shows the feeling of this dungeon isn't quite right. It's not really up to par, and that's kind of a downer. Okay. I'm on an overheat timer. I am. All right, let's listen back to that. I think I could do better. One of the biggest failings about this dungeon is that it doesn't feel like a dungeon. Just like Thousand Maws before it, it feels... I need more of a gap there, but it's very much just like an extended guild hest because there's not really a challenge here. Granted, the final boss is a lot better than a guild hest would offer you, and it actually does feel like a dungeon because you're going through a unique environment, unlike a guild hest. I just contradict myself. One of the biggest failings about this dungeon is that it doesn't feel like a dungeon. I just contradicted myself. It doesn't feel like a dungeon, but it feels like a dungeon. Okay, we gotta redo that. Let's try again. One of the biggest failings about Total Rock... Nope, that's the wrong name. One of the biggest failings about Tom Tara is that it doesn't really feel like a dungeon. It feels more like a guild hest. And just like Thousand Maws before it, it just doesn't justify its title. Sure, you find it a duty, and sure, it has a final boss worthy of being called a dungeon, but it just doesn't feel like it. It doesn't deliver that same challenge. And while it's on a slightly higher level than Thousand Maws, it still falls very low on the quality of dungeon list. And that's just a really bad sign. That's better. See how that goes. Today. One of the biggest failings about Tom Tara is that it doesn't really feel like a dungeon. It feels more like a guild hest. And just like Thousand Maws before it, it just doesn't justify its title. Sure, you find it a duty, and sure, it has a final boss worthy of being called a dungeon, but it just doesn't feel like it. It doesn't deliver that same challenge. And while it's on a slightly higher level than Thousand Maws, it still falls very low on the quality of dungeon list. And that's... I don't like that ending. Called a dungeon, but it just doesn't feel like it. It doesn't deliver that same challenge. And while it's on a slightly higher level than Thousand Maws, it still falls very... Yeah, I'll cut it off right there. Challenge. And while it's... Quality of dungeon list. Yeah, that's not great. Plus it did a really big exhale here. Cutting in the middle of an exhale is not great because it's hard to remove that. But same challenge. Okay, that's good. Doesn't give you that same challenge. And what I'm looking for when I enter one of these things is to, well, have an experience. This is supposed to be harder, or at the very least interesting. Deepcroft doesn't deliver any of that. Much better. I don't need to justify it being higher than 1,000 mods quite yet. So let's leave that out. And what I'm looking for when I enter the same challenge. And what I'm looking for when I enter one of these things is to, well, have an experience. This is supposed to be harder, or at the very least interesting. Deepcroft doesn't deliver any of that. I like that. We'll go with that. And we can actually cut in the guild hest footage here. We can shorten this gap a little bit. Interesting. Deepcroft doesn't deliver any of that. But Tom Tara doesn't give you that. It gives you 3 shadow orbs that you have. What are the odds of that I would repeat myself in the same place? Or any of that. But Tom Tara doesn't give you that. Okay, which one do I like better? Deepcroft doesn't deliver any of that. But Tom Tara doesn't give you that. This is supposed to be harder, or at the very least interesting. Deepcroft doesn't deliver any of that. But Tom Tara doesn't give you that. I like the second one better. Original. Or at the very least interesting. But audio's a little high. Let me fix that. It's a little loud compared to the next part. How do I readjust the volume? There. A little less. This is supposed to be harder, or at the very least interesting, but Tom Tara doesn't give you that. The pacing doesn't match. The very least interesting, but Tom Tara doesn't give you that. Because I go from fast to slow. This is supposed to be harder, or at the very least interesting, but Tom Tara doesn't give you that. If I remove the gap, will that fix it? I don't think it will. This is supposed to be harder, or at the very least interesting, but Tom Tara doesn't give you that. It gives you 3 shadow orbs that you have to shut down, each guarded by a void soul counter. Didn't I fix this before? Soul counter. Void soul counter. Could have sworn I fixed this already. A void soul counter. A void soul counter. Okay. Maybe I made the same mistake twice. I don't know. Deja vu, no kin. Okay, let me listen to that whole section back. And what I'm looking for when I enter one of these things is to, well, have an experience. This is supposed to be harder, or at the very least interesting. But Tom Tara doesn't give you that. It gives you 3 shadow orbs that you have to shut down, each guarded by a void soul counter. And then I'll add, to finish my thought here, soul counter. And after all that is the final boss. It's all the same, it's all repetitive, and it's not much of a finale. So, really just not a good experience overall. Nah. Oh. Down, each guarded by a void soul counter. Once you get through the final barrier, then there's the boss, and then you're done. And that's it. That's the whole thing. No. And then you get through the barrier at the end, fight a few more enemies, then the final boss happens, and that's the whole experience. I really don't like using the word experience. I've overused the words dungeon, experience, and bad. I need to find another word. That's the whole journey. That's the whole trip. That's the whole battle. That's the whole... Journey sounds a bit weird. Yeah, I don't like that. Let's use a thesaurus for experience. Noun. Adventure, encounter, event, happening, incident, occurrence, ordeal, test, trial, trip. That's the whole encounter. Encounter, I like that. Let's use encounter. Then you get through a barrier at the end, fight a few more mobs, then the final boss happens, and that's the whole encounter. It's really a letdown for what is supposed to be another strong experience. I don't know what I was pivoting to there. No, I'll just cut the whole thing. Experience. Then you get through a barrier at the end, fight a few more mobs, and then the final boss happens. And then that's the whole encounter. If that's really all you're offering me, then I just don't want to partake in it. It's really kind of a letdown. I like that. All right, let's turn up that volume. See how it goes. Then you get through a barrier at the end, fight a few more mobs, then the final boss happens. And then that's the whole encounter. If that's really all you're offering me, then I just don't want to partake in it. It's really kind of a letdown. Soul counter. Then you get through a barrier at the end, fight a few more mobs, and then the final boss happens. And then that's the whole encounter. Okay. I am fine with the wording. Timing needs to be fixed just a little bit. And I think that's all I really need to say. Although I do still want to make a comparison to 1000 Maws as to why this is slightly better. If that's really all you're offering me, then I just don't want to partake in it. It's really kind of a letdown. But these aren't really bosses. The game and the wikis list them as such, but oh yeah, then I go into my rant about the soul counters. Cannot in good conscience call them bosses. Oh, I know how to do this. I can say, and this is why and the only reason Tom Tara is better than 1000 Maws is because it actually offers unique enemies as bosses. And then we pivot into, but these aren't really bosses. The game and the wikis list them as such, but I cannot in good conscience call them bosses. They're just harder mobs. Perfect. Okay, let's do that. It's far too simple and devoid of content. Oh. I just don't want to partake in it. It's really kind of a letdown. Need more space. And the only reason it's not as low as 1,000 mods is because the only reason that this ranks higher than 1,000 mods is because at the very least it offers unique enemies as bosses and a unique final boss. No. And one of the few reasons that this ranks higher than 1,000 mods is that at the very least it offers unique enemies as bosses. That being the void soul counters. But these aren't really bosses. The game and the wikis list them as such, but I cannot in good conscience call them bosses. They're just harder mobs. They spawn after all the mobs are gone. They have a wide AoE attack, and that's really it. They're really not that much more difficult. They're just a little stiffer to beat. And that's it. Once you beat it, you move on. That's not really a boss. There's nothing new to do with void soul counters. You have to beat 3 of them in a row to get to the final boss. Much like I don't need that last part. Sorry, I was listening to the audio there. I don't need this part. Kill another mob. I can't in good conscience after all the mobs are right here in a row to get to the final boss. Yeah, I don't need this section right here. And you have to beat 3 of them in a row to void soul counters. And you have to beat new to do with void soul counters. And you have to beat 3 of them in a row to get to the final boss. Much like the Cruella Ninetales. Yeah, there's really no point to that statement right there. To beat 3 of them in a row. Do with void soul counters. Much like the Cruella Ninetales, it just feels like a waste of time. But at least the Cruella Ninetales had a mechanic going with it that they were trying to introduce. Here, it's just kill another mob. Okay, I'm glad that I've shortened it quite a bit. That's what I wanted. Kill another mob. I can't in good conscience. Whoa. Need a bigger gap than that. Another mob. I can't in good conscience accept that as a boss. And the final boss, Galvanth the Dominator, granted is a bit... that... here? And the final boss, Galvanth the Dominator, granted is a bit cool. I mean, who doesn't like a good Mind Flayer design? And his invincibility mechanic is at least something new that the player has to deal with. But it's really just a no-nonsense fight, pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and really nothing to worry about. I mean, he casts water of all spells. That's not really something to worry about. And that is why Tamtara falls so far down the list. And that is why Tamtara falls so far down the list. It may have been interesting, and I'm like, oh, cool, that's a fun shadow orb, but that's it. I just turn my mind off for the rest of the dungeon, and I think that's true for a lot of other people as well. In researching the overall opinion of people when it comes to all of these dungeons, Tamtara often found itself on negative lists. And I think that's because people in general just don't appreciate a dungeon like this that's far too simple and I think that's because people in general just don't appreciate a dungeon like this that's far too simple and devoid of content. Is there a way I can replace that dungeon? Comes to all of these dungeons, Tamtara often found itself on negative lists. And I think that's because people in general just don't appreciate a dungeon like this that's far too simple and devoid of content. Right, and then I have an ending. I don't think there is a way to replace that, unfortunately. Okay, and for the ending, what should I say? And a dungeon void of content is just a waste of time. No. And anything that is this void... Hold on, what did I just say? A dungeon like this that's far too simple and devoid of content. So it's no surprise that it falls so low. No. So it's no surprise that it ranks at number 30, second only to 1000 Maws in sheer futility. In sheer stupidity. I don't want to say stupidity. Second only to 1000 Maws in what? Crapability. Really reminds me of Dio. It does, doesn't it? It's a very strong and almost noble kind of term. Fruitlessness. Ooh, I like that. Meaningless, pointlessness, senseless, worthless. Oh, I should use all of these. That is second on that muda means futile, and muda is his entire thing. Right. Muda, 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 muda. So it's no surprise that everybody considers this a fruitless waste of time. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a fruitless worth. Why do I keep saying fruitless worth? So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a fruitless waste of your time. Sounds a bit out of the bag. It does, doesn't it? It's not working quite right. I think meaningless might work better. So it's no surprise that almost everyone considers this a meaningless encounter. A meaningless excursion. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a meaningless excursion. Best look elsewhere for content. Almost had it. Content is not what I need to say. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a meaningless excursion. Look elsewhere for fun. I think I like that. See how that works, how that translates. Simple and devoid of content. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a meaningless excursion. Look elsewhere for fun. One sounds like you are hating on it. It is a bit mean. I don't like how that pastes together. Let me hear it again. General just don't appreciate a dungeon like this that's far too simple and devoid of content. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a meaningless excursion. I just take out the last part. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a meaningless excursion. Okay, that's better. It's not as negative, but still hammers the point home that a lot of people don't like this. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a meaningless excursion. I'll take it. Fix the timing a little bit. dungeon like this that's far too simple and devoid of content. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a meaningless excursion. Why does it sound so different? Is it because it's quieter? 30 to go. Well, 29. I've already completed the first one. We're not quite done here. It's far too simple and devoid of content. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a meaningless excursion. Okay. Much better. Okay, and before I forget, I need to add the soundtrack to this whole thing. The soundtrack is supposed to be playing through this whole thing. Sphere in the center. The cultists are trying to empower it and summon a dark god. And, you know, so starts cutting out right about there. The aesthetic of it is actually pretty nice. There's a giant glowing shadow sphere in the center. The cultists are trying to empower it and summon a dark god. And, you know, the tomb aspect is always a solid pick if you want to go for a spooky, solid investment. But at this point, tombs are overplayed. Deepcroft does not have a good background music. Pretty nice. There's a giant glowing shadow sphere in the center. The cultists are trying to empower it and summon a dark god. And, you know, the tomb aspect is always a solid pick if you want to go for a spooky, solid investment. But at this point, tombs are overplayed and really need to stand out in order to really be a solid pick. The circular design... Okay, I'm happy with that. So now we just copy this all the way down. Hold on, we gotta cut off the right amount and then copy it. There. So we'll just copy that. It's, oh my god, it's shocking how bad Realm Reborn soundtracks are when you go through the dungeons. I literally only had 3 dungeons out of 31 that I actually recalled the music for. Because one of the bigger problems Realm Reborn had is that out of like the first 10 dungeons didn't repeat their background songs. It would cut to like battle music and then it just wouldn't go back to its soundtrack, which is like, why would you do this? Now it's just deafening silence. And then, you know, they actually started repeating the music, and it's like, why weren't you doing this before? But it really goes to show that they were not focused on music in Realm Reborn. Thank God that changed. Now music is like one of the main things people look forward to. And the fact is that this is like 30 seconds long of a soundtrack, so it's really nothing. Encounters the players would deal with that didn't have indications for its attacks. Oh, I went too far. A dungeon like this that's far too simple. Oh, yep. Oh my god, I went way too far. Oh my god, I only needed like 5 of them. Oh my god, this section for Tantara is so short. Well, that's probably a good thing. There honestly is not much else to talk about. So we'll have that drift off. Okay, now let's focus on this last part here. Why does this sound so much quieter? Void content. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this. I need a hint louder. Just a hint. Devoid of content. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a meaningless excursion. This gap is bothering me, just a hint. Let that happen earlier. Shorten that. A dungeon like this that's far too simple and devoid of content. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a meaningless excursion. Damn, okay, yeah, that's definitely a stream thing then, because I didn't hear anything. This that's far too simple and devoid of content. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a meaningless excursion. Okay, that'll do. Now I just need to fill in the video footage. The fight of Tom Tara is a bit more interesting, and you don't really see that in any other dungeon from this point on. But that's it. One of the biggest failings about Tom Tara is that it doesn't really feel like a dungeon. It feels more like a guildhest. Ah, yes. So this is where I would cut to the guildhest footage. Which one is it? No, not that one. This one? Yeah, this one. Ooh, that's huge. Need to cut out. Mark in. Mark out. Still too long. Okay. Mark out. Better. Okay. Really feel like a dungeon. Cool. And then put the timeline back on. Really feel like a dungeon. About Tom Tara is that it doesn't really feel like a dungeon. It feels more like a guildhest. And just like Thousand Maws before it, it just doesn't justify its title. Sure, you find it a duty, and sure, it has a final boss worthy of being called a dungeon, but it just doesn't feel like it. It doesn't deliver that same challenge. And what I'm looking for when I enter one of these things is to, well, have an experience. This is supposed to be harder, or at the very least interesting, but Tom Tara doesn't give you that. It gives you 3 shadow orbs that you have to shut down, each guarded by a void soul counter. Then you get through a barrier at the end, fight a few more mobs, and then the final boss happens. And then that's the whole encounter. If that's really all you're offering me, then I just don't want to partake in it. It's really kind of a letdown. Oh, did not increase the audio for that. 20's too high. Give me 19. 18's good. Partake in it. It's really kind of a letdown. And one of the few reasons that this ranks higher than Thousand Maws is that at the very least it offers unique and wouldn't participate fit more than partake. If that's really all you're offering me, then I just don't want to partake in it. It's really kind of a letdown. You're right. Partake does sound a bit stiff, a bit unnatural. I just don't want to partake in it. We can cut out this section. Move this back so it's got breathing room. And we record. I just don't want to participate in it. It's really kind of a letdown. It's really me, then I just don't want to participate in it. It's really kind of a letdown. Oh, that's much better. Nice suggestion. Thank you. Me, then I just don't want to participate in it. It's really kind of a letdown. And one of the few reasons that I don't even need the letdown part. I think the participate is even more. I just don't want to participate in it. If you're offering me, then I just don't want to participate in it. That's much better. Oh, I love that. Very nice. More natural. Yeah, I agree. in it. And one of the few reasons that this a little bit more of a gap there, participate in it. And one of the few little less of a gap, participate in it. And one of the few reasons that this ranks higher than 1000 Moz is that at the very least it offers unique enemies as bosses. That being the void soul counters. And then we go into our rant about soul counters. And we bridge these two gaps together. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh no. Oh, okay. Yep. Okay. That being the void soul counters. But these aren't really bosses. The game and the wikis list them as such, but I cannot in good conscience call them bosses. They're just harder mobs. They spawn after all the mobs are gone. They have a wide AoE attack, and that's really it. They're really not that much more difficult. They're just a little stiffer. That's really it. They're too much of a gap there. Used to edit recordings of your voice for assignments and really try to make my voice natural, so that's why I kind of just notice things. Nice. See, life experience, right? You never know when stuff like that will play a role in other things. Like, I never knew any of my graphic design experience would help out so much with streaming, but here we are. Okay, I'm gonna move all of these over just a hair. Oh crap. Really it. They're really not that much more difficult. They're just a little... I practice graphic design. I wouldn't say I did it. When I was... it was one of the weird paths I took when I was trying to teach myself game development. One of the first things I wanted to do was make animations, so I could learn how to make like 3D models. So I taught myself like 7 things at the same time. I learned how to code, how to use Unity, how to make 3D models in Blender, how to make sound effects, how to edit, and then eventually I realized I'm probably going to need to do sprites or 2D work instead because my 3D stuff wasn't coming together. So I started teaching myself graphic design, how to work with images and create those assets. And I did that so long that I essentially became adept at it enough that I probably could have gotten a job with it. And then it became, and then I'd started streaming. And I was like, wait, I can make all of this stuff that people are like begging for online. I can just make it myself. And here we are. Need a small break for a soda drink and some water. Oh. Graphic design would have been a way more interesting career path than what I ended up taking. Oh. I came very close to doing one, if I recall. Why didn't I take that job? Oh my god, I remember. Because my current job offered me a raise to keep me. That's probably one of the bigger mistakes I've made in my career. I was at a job that I didn't like. I was looking for another job. I got the job. Funny story about that. I actually interviewed for it. They forgot about me. 2 months later, they came back to me and say, hey, we have you on record as having interviewed for this position that we still have open. Are you still interested in this? I'm like, yeah, sure. Did another interview, nailed that. And like, okay, we'd love to offer you the job. I told my boss that I'm quitting. I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice. I'm going to another job. And they say, we'd really like to keep you. So I'll offer you a raise if you'll stay. And I stayed because it was easy job at the time. I needed more stability. Oh, but that's one of the bigger mistakes I've ever made. I should have taken that job. That's a lesson for anyone who hears this. More money is not the solution. Better money is the solution. A better job, a more interesting job, will pay you so much more in life than money ever will. You do need the money, let's be real, but what's the point of earning $30 an hour if you're absolutely miserable? Did you try again to get that job? Oh, probably not. I don't even remember what the job was, what the company was called, because it was like, this was right after I started college. I was still in college at this point. I think, that's probably one of the bigger reasons I didn't take the job, was because I needed something that could work around my college schedule. And my current job only had me working at night in the evenings. So it's like I could do my college stuff and then work in the evenings, which was much better. But the graphic design job didn't really have that. But gosh, I can't even remember. That was 14 years ago. That was how long ago that was. That was like almost after I graduated high school. Holy moly. 13 years, but yeah. If I go through all my old emails 13 years ago, I might find the name of the job. You know what? That's not a bad idea, though. I could put together a resume of all my graphic design stuff, make a portfolio, and say, hey, I've got some skills here. I would like that. But right now is not the time to be pivoting to yet another filler career, because I don't want to be a graphic design artist, unfortunately. I want to be a game developer. I want to be a content creator. So if I'm going to pivot, it's going to be to those. So that ship has sailed, so to speak. I don't know, though. Maybe I should take it more seriously. Maybe I should put that as one of my big skills on my resume, because I never really called it my work experience, because I technically have never done it for a job. But now I have. I've been doing it for 5 years for stream design. So there you go. Alright, so I have to turn this fan back on. It's so hot in here. Wow. Holy moly, dude. Holy moly. At least it's getting darker out. It's still like, yep, it's 88 degrees in this room. Nope, it's still 90. It's still 90 degrees in this room. Kill me. Okay, back to it. They're really not that much more difficult. They're just a little stiffer to beat. And that's it. Once you beat it, you move on. That's not really a boss. Okay, I'm happy with the audio, so let's start filling in the video, because I'm essentially done with the audio. Sure, you find it a duty, and sure, it has a final boss worthy of being called a dungeon, but it just doesn't feel like it. It doesn't deliver that same challenge. And what I'm looking for when I enter one of these things is to, well, have an experience. What could I use as the challenge portion? I guess I could use more boss fight footage. Oh, whoops. Do not shorten all those clips. That would have been a terrible waste. And the final boss, Galvant the Dominator, granted, is... I've planned a lot of games I want to make in the future, but there's one I do want to make more than the others. Oh yeah, tell me about it. I'd love to hear it. I love hearing game ideas. I've got 8 of my own that I've developed to a serious degree, so to speak. So I love to hear ideas. Challenge footage. Let's go through what I've got. What in this footage looks like it's a challenge? I mean, there's no big pulls. The final fight before the boss? Oh, you know what? The walkway is interesting. Prickly bushes of dungeons, and there's only one that can start off this list. The most infamous dungeon in the... There's a really good reason why. It's in I mean, the old dungeon is painted.
Wow, this is
which
really
slows
bad
you down when
footage.
you step in it, and it's in every room, so have fun with that. But that alone is okay. That I might be able to use. Let's do that. It's very short, but at this point I need to start finalizing the video. It's not like pulling in stuff from another dungeon will make the point. Finding a duty, and sure, it has a final boss worthy of being called a dungeon, but it just doesn't feel like it. It doesn't deliver that same challenge. And what I'm looking for when I end called a dungeon, but it just doesn't feel like it. It doesn't deliver that same challenge. And what I'm looking for when I enter one of these things is to, well, have an experience. This is supposed to be harder, or at the very least interesting, but Tantara doesn't give you that. It gives you 3 shadow orbs that you have to make a new style of horror game where the players would be scared in the light and feel safe in the dark. The theme I gave to it was hell and heaven, but it's mostly heaven. I want it to be a horror game, but also a game that allows the players to feel like they are doing something and something they are involved in. So not like a helpless horror game, but more like a survival horror game, so to speak. I like that. I like the concept of reversing light and dark. Sorta, okay. So I guess survival horror is not the best term. I don't know what term to give it though. Sorry, I've got a plastic thing in my hat I'm trying to get rid of real quick. Ignore the hat hair. Yeah, I love the idea of creating that reverse feeling, right? Because everyone is like, the light is your safe space and the dark is like, I don't want to go in there. But to reverse that feeling would be really fascinating. I'd love to see that. A short you might want to watch. I don't know if it'll help with the inspiration, but who knows, maybe it will. Watch The Moth from Corridor Crew, and it really explores that idea of reversing the idea where it's a horror villain that only shows up with where there's light, so light becomes the enemy, and they're desperately trying to stay in the dark. So maybe that'll help with a few concepts. God dang, what's up with this thing? It's like just stuck in there. I have to cut this. I don't think I'm gonna get it out. Oh. I had planned one big mount, which would mainly be in a building, but there would be an outside, although it would be dangerous. Okay, so yeah, like a locked off area. So going outside would be suicide, so to speak. I like that. There we go. I still haven't gotten it out, but there's nothing else I can do. Now this is going to bother me. I got to do something about this. I'm going to use my tweezers. My OCD is kicking in. This is the content you sub to the stream for. It's me in all my glory. Trying to frickin' tweezer my hat. Shouldn't have cut it. Made it that much harder on myself. Can't really see it now. There we go. I have a better idea. I can't pull it out because I'm pretty sure it's tied to something, but if I cut it even finer with the cutting tweezers, I'll be even happier. Got it. I feel like dead silence is another form of ambience, only interrupted by footsteps and entities. Yeah, dead silence could be very effective. You have to be careful with that though, because if you don't include any music at any points, then the lack of stimulation might come back to bite you. But overall, yeah, going with dead silence first and foremost is a good idea, because ambiance is usually the scariest thing, right? I plan on adding them slowly as you purchase the game. So yeah, slow but steady. Take your time to introduce every enemy. My favorite enemy systems are the ones that introduce each one as you go. Think of Doom. Doom is really good at that, because it gives every enemy their own little moment so that you can identify them differently from others. The worst type of systems are ones that just throw them in there and think, oh, well, they're just part of the group now. No, make them feel special. Even if you're going to repeat them a whole bunch later, give them one moment where they feel like a new, interesting threat, and then they'll sell it for the rest of the game. I also want the ability to fully defeat the enemies if you were to go out of your way and do it. Defeatable enemies in a horror game that is difficult but not impossible. Yes. Yes, that's a very hard balance to hit, though. So good luck with that. That is certainly a challenge, because going too far is Dead Space 3, where they're not really a threat at all. And not far enough is games like Silent Hill. Ooh, you know what you should reference? Lethal Company. Lethal Company, I think, has the perfect balance of being able to kill enemies, but still having to be concerned with all of them. And a few that are just invincible because you can't deal with them. I think that's a really good balance to reference. Anyway, for that same challenge. And what I'm looking for when I enter one of these things is to, well, have an experience. This is supposed to be harder, or at the very least interesting, but Tom Tara doesn't give you that. It gives you 3 shadow orbs that you have to shut down, each guarded by a void soul counter. Then you get through a barrier at the end, fight a few more mobs, and then the final boss happens. And then that's... But Tom Tara doesn't give you that. It gives you 3 shadow orbs that you have to shut down, each guarded by a void soul counter. Then you get through a barrier at the end, fight a few more mobs, and then the final boss happens. And then that's the whole encounter. Oof, I don't like that footage at all. But Tom Tara doesn't give you that. It gives you 3 shadow orbs that you have to shut down, each guarded by a void soul counter. Then you get through a barrier at the end, fight a few more mobs. I think I'm going to have to put in one of the void soul counters. But these aren't really bosses. The game and the wikis list them as such, but I cannot in good conscience call them bosses. They're just... and that's soul counters. Much like the Corolla Ninetales, it just feels like a waste of time. Just harder mobs. They bit cool. I mean, who doesn't like a good mind flash thing? And I'm like, oh cool, that's a fun shadow. Okay, that's a worthless footage right there. I'm not playing like a run around the weapon type defeating. It's more like setting up a certain thing that would seal away the entity. The runner type, I was thinking maybe you make it crash, and especially when it gets grabbed by hands as shadows and dragged in. Okay, yeah, I like that. Certainly Lethal Company isn't the good reference for like how you would kill them, because Lethal Company was designed with you in mind not killing them, but I guess the difficulty in dealing with the enemies would probably be the best reference. But I like that. Each one has their own weakness that you have to exploit. I like it. Adventures. Let's cut this off right here. Put this over here. And deliver that same challenge. And what I'm looking for when I enter one of these things is to, well, have an experience. This is supposed to be harder, or at the very least interesting, But Tantara doesn't give you that. It gives you 3 shadow orbs that you have to shut down, each guarded by a... But Tantara doesn't give you that. It gives you 3 shadow orbs that you have to shut down, each guarded by a void soul counter. And I'm getting through the barrier. Oh. I was way off on this footage. Little stiffer to beat. And that's it. Once you beat it, you move on. That's not really... They're really a boss. There's nothing new to do with void soul counters. Much like the Cruella Ninetales, it just feels like a waste of time. But at least the Cruella, that's really harder mobs. And the wikis list them as such, but I cannot in good conscience call them bosses. Right here. Soul counter. Then you get through a barrier at the end, fight a few more mobs, and then the final boss happens. And then that's the whole encounter. If that's really all you're offering me, then I just don't want to participate in it. And one of the few reasons that this ranks higher than 1000 Maws is that at the very least it... Okay, and then we can pivot here. That's good. I like that. That's good footage placement. Now we put the Void Soul Counter fights in here. Annoying as they are. I think the second one's my best footage. Simple enough. Plus it copies Fire Main's oncoming fire explodey thing mechanic, which is interesting enough on its own. I want the ceiling to take a certain amount of effort so people have to decide whether they want to spend the time to seal the enemy. Indeed. I like that. I like that. Yeah. It's a choice. Man, that's like the secret sauce when it comes to game design. Giving the player options when it comes to stuff is such good design because it stimulates them. It makes them think, what is my best choice here? Giving them options. This is the path I want to take. And yet having them end up at basically the same place that everybody else. That is such... That's design 101. That's good stuff. Because you want everybody to end up at roughly the same place, but you want everyone to feel like they're taking their own individual journey to get there. So I love that. That's really good. I'm really very picky when it comes to games, especially horror ones. So I can make a game that not only entertains me, but also scares me. Speedrunners will need to deal with all of them. Yes, I'm going to make a game just to punish speedrunners. How dare they get through my game faster? I just don't want to participate in it. And one of the few reasons that this ranks higher than 1000 Maws is that at the very least it offers unique enemies as bosses, that being the Void Soul counters. But these aren't really bosses. The game and... Oh yeah, that's good. Undertale has inspired me to make choices. Yeah, see, exactly. Because there's 2 ways you can handle the choice aspect, right? There's the Fable route. I call it the Fable choice. The Undertale design, and the Mass Effect choice, the pathway, I should say. So with Fable, you're all playing the same story, but the way the world treats you is different based on if you're making good or bad choices. That's morality, right? But you're still facing the same bosses, you're still facing the same enemies. Nothing really changes, but it makes you feel like you're doing better, like Fallout. Nothing really changes except some aspects of the story, some dialogue, how the ending is told, stuff like that. Undertale is like, we have 3 distinct paths for you to take by making these choices. The genocide route, the pacifist route, the neutral route. You are going down a certain path where there is no turning back by making these choices. That's the Undertale method. And the final method, the Mass Effect method, is we're going to create this huge branching pathway. Everyone can take their own decisions, romance who they want, kill who they want, act however they want, but everything comes back to the end where everyone has basically the exact same ending, which is pretty controversial because the whole point of Mass Effect was that wasn't supposed to happen. But in general, the Mass Effect method happens a lot, so that's why I bring it up. And it can be done very well. I, for instance, actually do like the Mass Effect story. And a lot of stories do that, where it's like, oh yeah, you're taking different paths. Resident Evil, I think, is a good option. Because you play different characters, you're going down different routes and different methods to the story, but they all end up at the same ending, because they're all fighting the same boss at the end, even though they usually have different final bosses. But I think that works out pretty well. I love geeking out about game design. The wikis list them as such, but I cannot in good conscience call them bosses. They're just harder mobs. They spawn after all the mobs are gone. They have a wide AoE attack, and that's really it. They're really not that much more difficult. They're just a little stiffer to beat.
This is such good
and
footage
that's
for
it.
showing
Once
how
you beat it, you
boring
move
the
on.
Void is.
That's not really a boss. There's nothing new to do with Void soul counters. Much like the Cruella Ninetales, it just feels like a waste of time. But at least the Cruella Ninetales had a mechanic going. Ooh, should I bring in Cruella Ninetales footage here? I think I should. Wow, okay. Didn't think I'd be doing that. I'm actually bringing in footage from Thousand Maws in here. Am I crazy? Alright, but it's got to be slightly different footage. I should add another audio track so that doesn't happen. We're going to call this OST, and then the empty one below that. Cool. Slightly different curl fact. Oh, don't do that. I want to copy this. Thank you. Thank you. Dang it. I'm making this so much harder on myself. I don't need any of this audio. It's just easier to leave it, because if you try to remove it, it just makes life so much harder. It's so much more work. It's best not even to bother. So the less work you have to do for yourself, you know? I think I was planning on putting that here or here. Here. Okay, so I want slightly different. And the final boss, Galvanthe the Dominant, much like the Cruella Ninetales, it just feels like a waste of time, but at least the Cruella Ninetales had a mechanic going with it that they were trying to introduce. Here, it's just kill another mob. They're really not that much more difficult. They're just a little stiffer to beat. And that's it. Once you beat it, you move on. That's not really a boss. There's nothing new to do with Void soul counters. Much like the Cruella Ninetales, it just feels like a waste of time. But actually, one of the things I can go on and on about. The thing I have been trouble on about my game is the enemies. What enemies you pick? Tough concept for a game like this. Because if you're talking about like biblical enemies, you have far less concepts to pull on than from demonic enemies, you know? Because demons you can go on and on about, but angels don't have as much variety, you know, as demons do. It's very difficult. I guess you really have to work on those. Because, you know, the big ones, the biblical angels, you know, that's like, oh, that's an obvious one. Everyone goes to that one. But that's a big kahuna, right? That's a big mythical monster to deal with. I was thinking about skinny figures all in black, but no, that's too generic. Unless you make them like, you found a way to make them move unnaturally, that wouldn't work, because as much as I love the backrooms, I've never really liked the monster in the backrooms, because it just doesn't look that terrifying to me, because it's too thin. It's too unreal. You know what I mean? It doesn't seem frightening because it's like, it looks fake. it works because of the jump scare and the noises and the positioning of it, but you know what I think works more in that regard? Something like, have you ever seen the movie Mama? Where, it's like a she-demon. That's that's one of the most unnatural moving horror movie monsters I've ever seen. It's not black and skinny, but it's kind of like the weird lanky kind of thing. I was more going for like a shriveled human bowl food. That would work. Like if you're going for like the Re-Deads from Legend of Zelda, that would work. Shriveled human that shrieks at you. And if you made them move fast, that would be pretty dope. I mean, that's why everyone is so afraid of the Re-Deads, because they're horrifying, right? Story was the main enemy had killed all the other humans who came up, and those would be the remnants. I see. You could call them remnants. You have to pick the color correctly, though. I think black just wouldn't work. Pale doesn't work. Gray, please God, don't make them gray. What would work though? Because you can't just straight up copy Legend of Zelda. Would they still be wearing clothes? Ooh, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot. It's actually a sick name. Hell yeah! Yes, I got credited. I'm going to get credit. Remnants, let's go. But at least, because you don't want them to be just like, oh, these are zombies, right? No, you want them to be distinctly different from the Crow Ninetails had a mechanic zombies. But at least the Crow Ninetails had to make soul counters, much like the Crow. Yeah, right about here. And then we'll move that up and then extend that footage. And one of the few reasons that this ranks higher than 1000 Maws is that at the very least it offers unique enemies as bosses, that being the Void Soul. Okay, yeah, that'll work. A little extra work there. Yeah, because there's nothing more overused at this point than zombies, right? So no close, get rid of the close. If you have any enemies that look like they're withered husks in close, they're going to think zombie. So you don't want them thinking that. But what else could you do to make them seem unnaturally dead? Like maybe like veins. Like an idea I've always had. Ooh, I kind of like this idea. If you're going for the darkness, right? Maybe you have them shriveled and black, but there's veins throughout them that are like bright, like glowing bright, or maybe red or some unnatural color that kind of, you know, outlines their face, like the gaping holes and maw of their face that kind of spreads out through their body so that you can kind of see how their body moves, so they're not just shadows, because shadows are boring. If you just have figures moving in shadows, that's not as intriguing. You need something to give them shape, and the vein idea will not only allow you to give them a face to be afraid of, it'll add to the lore aspect of, you know, how they died, and then also give them shape and make them unique. The husk idea, I like that. There's probably a little more you need to do. Like, are you going for like a shadowy darkness figure or like a shriveled black human with that look? And then you'd have to nail down the details, but soul counters, a solid idea. Much like the Corolla Ninetails, it just feels like a waste of time. Hopefully that works. But at least the Corolla Ninetails had a mechanic going with it that they were trying to introduce. Here it's just kill another mob. I can't. Okay, and then we'll go back to another soul counter. Really just a no soul counter attack. Ooh, I know what I'll do. Final encounter again. The entire game. And there's a really good reason why. There's a lot of reasons why, to be fair. The arm, it's 5 stacks, you already average enough boss. Yeah, this won't work. What's the name you gave? Remnants was what I came up with. Remnants. I also call them husks sometimes when I'm thinking about that idea in my head. But I think remnants would actually work a lot better because you want them to give the idea of the things left behind. This is what's left over of everything that was here. Husks doesn't quite give out the same idea. Like for husks, you'd like think you're that's almost like a shell of a human. You know, maybe they're just like a soulless human, whereas remnant is like this is a dead, shriveled up piece of flesh that's just not alive anymore. But again, whatever works for you. I'm just spitballing. I guess I gotta make this even shorter. Remnants does work though. The Corolla 9-tail, the concept works for what you're aiming for, I think. Very here it's just, yeah. I agree, I like that. And introduce. Here it's just kill another mob. I can't in good conscience accept that as a boss. And the final boss, Galvanth the Dominator. Yeah, very, very lame bosses here. In researching the overall opinion of people when it comes to all of these, so it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this. Oh, we're almost done. Just one more gap to, no, 2 gaps to fill. Okay. So I saw English where I used just looking around. No, I really didn't. Makes the main enemy feel more evil in a way. Yeah, because that's another thing. You want people to either be afraid of or be threatened by your main enemy. Right? Because I can't tell you how many times people put forth like this big threatening enemy and expect us to be like, oh, cool, that's really scary. And it's just like, nah, man. It doesn't work that way. You have to give them a reason. Right? And creating stuff like that where it's like, this is what it left behind. You could even see it doing it to somebody if you want to really sell it home. Or, you know, it just builds that reputation that you want for your main enemy. There you are. What's a good example of like doing that so poorly? Like they were like, oh, they'll probably think this is really scary. And I was like, I don't really care. Hitman Absolution. I have a good example from Hitman. I don't know if you've ever played it, but there is this scene. It was in the trailer, so they were hyping up this moment in the trailer where you would face off against these nuns that were secretly assassins. And the trailer for this was like, these nuns come out of nowhere, reveal themselves, they're actually killer assassins, they blow up this whole hotel, and then they're marching along, and all of a sudden you see the hitman actually sneaking up behind them, and one by one he takes out these badass assassins until there's only one of them remaining, and then you realize, oh yeah, this is the real top dog assassin. Great trailer, awesome trailer. Go into the game, get up to that point, and they're like, yeah, these assassins have been sent after you, deal with them, and the whole level, one level dealing with these nun assassins, and they operate just like every other thug. You know, it's just a different design, and it was such a disappointment. I was really looking forward to that showdown. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna kill you like everybody else. Like, that's not... You gotta sell this enemy to me. Why should I care about this enemy? Otherwise, they're just nameless enemies to me. Dead Space was really good at selling its enemies. I think every single one of its monsters got a brilliant introduction. Roblox horror games. Oh my god, yeah. I'm just gonna run down these doorways, all of a sudden a random face is gonna come after you. Be scared. Right? But he considers this such a dungeon like this, that's far... That's such a... So true. Okay. comes to all of these dungeons. Tom Tara off. There it is. I think that's the last footage. Now I need to find footage to fill in this blurb and deliver that same challenge. And what I'm looking for when I enter one of these things is to, well, have an experience. This is supposed to be harder, or at the very least interesting, but Tom Tara doesn't. What could I use to fill in that? I should fill in like an example of a really thrilling dungeon moment. I hate horror games in Roblox because they just aren't scary. Yeah, they're just loud. They're just like jump scare and they'd be like, okay, be scared. It's like, that's so cheap though. Roblox horror games are cheap. That's why they don't work. Which is why it's a rarity that any of the Roblox games actually were entertaining to me. So if you make your horror game feel like a task, you are doing everything wrong. Boom! That's so true. That's so true. Oh my god, I hate it when horror games make you do all these tedious tasks and it's a chore to get through all of them. Like if you're solving a puzzle, great. Rise that tension. Make it as high as you can. But don't make it like, okay, I've got to figure out what this equation equals, and that's the number of steps I have to take backwards, turn the key clockwise 3 times, and then remember this color I saw on the floor 3 floors ago. It's like, no, man, you're making it too complicated. If it's complicated, they don't get it. And if they don't get it, you've lost them. The moment they don't get it, you've lost the plot. So that's such a big thing you should shout to every game designer. As soon as people don't know what's going on, you've lost it. You've lost the gamer. Because they don't know why they're doing what they're doing, they don't know what's happening, and they don't know why they should care. Right? In any aspect, especially in horror. Like, why should I be scared right now? Make us scared of something by making it scary, not by making it deep in lore and complicated. It doesn't work like that. The lore and complication can come after. Look at FNAF. FNAF has some really scary freaking animatronics. And then there's lore added on top of it, which makes them that much more fascinating. So, God, what's an example of a horror game that's just way too busy that let me down? None come to mind, to be fair. I don't play that many horror games, so I don't have a long list. But I can think of one. I saw someone else play it. What was the name of it? It was like, it should have been scary, but it just didn't come off that way. Oh, what was it called? It's going to drive me nuts. I'm going through my list right now, thinking if I can remember. Oh no, I'm going through every game I own just to see if I can remember. No, not Baldi's. Baldi's is scary and annoying and frustrating. Case of the Golden Idol. No. That's for different reasons. I'm probably not going to remember. Ooh, was it Final Doom? No, I'm thinking of something else. Frick. Because I feel like I bought it because they were playing it. And then I was like, I watched them play more and I was like, oh, okay, so it's not as scary as we thought it would be. It just had like that one good moment that hooked us. Did I though? I'm never going to remember now. Oh, this is going to drive me nuts. I can see it in my mind. But I don't see it. I don't know it. Slender? No, Slender was scary. Screw, yeah. Shoot, yeah, I don't have anything. Was it one of those, like the stay out of the house games? No, those are all genuinely scary, and none of those are really busy, so. Slender was a revolutionary horror game? Oh, hell yeah. Slender Man was not just an internet phenomenon, it transformed the way horror games were done for such a long time. Meanwhile, I just thought of what I'm going to do for this video. I'm going to slip a little Amarat footage in there, because I can. Oh my god, Slender Man was brilliant, because it was brilliant in its simplicity. Because, first off, its origins were completely unique. No one had really had a horror icon like that before. Slender Man was birthed completely by the internet, right? And the copypasta, creepypasta culture of it all. And it created the idea of, oh, we can make a game this small. We can make something like this that is just really intimate, really simple, and really scary. And people will love it. And that led to like Grandma. I think that's what it's called. Granny. Granny was even less lowbrow. It was just you going around this tiny little house. It was a mobile game. It was super simple. And yet every horror game for the next 2 years was copying Granny because it was super popular. It was super easy to make. And it was such a simple concept, right? The idea of Slender Man was like, you need to survive in this horrifying environment for as long as you can. Grab 8 items, that's all you need to do. My dream is to make a revolutionary game and for the better. Absolutely, right? That's everybody's hope. It's like, I want to make the next keystone game, right? I don't think we've had one in a while. I think the closest we've gotten to is Baldur's Gate 3, right? Because before that was Fortnite. Let's be honest, it was Fortnite. Fortnite was the last big keystone game that transformed the industry. Battle royales, monetization, popularity, blah, blah, blah. Before that, which came first, Call of Duty or Minecraft? Because I kind of feel like those are in the same genre. Man, that was such a golden age for games. But yeah, since Fortnite, there hasn't really been a game that's changed the game. A game that's changed the game. There hasn't really been a revolutionary game, and Baldur's Gate 3 was such a shout to the industry that's like, this is what gamers want, pay attention. It was that kind of thing that people take notice of. It's like, oh yeah, this is the kind of game we want. We want a game that takes 10 years to make and has this much content in it. It gained all the rewards. It was super popular. People love it to death. People love the creators to death. And people are hating all the other crap that we've been spoon-fed. It beat Legend of Zelda. That's how big of a deal it was. Everyone thought, oh, Breath of the Wild is a sequel. It's a shoe-in, right? Tears of the Kingdom comes out and people are like, oh, cool. That was pretty awesome. But it wasn't Baldur's Gate 3. Whew. I was so scared during that Game Awards because I thought legitimately Baldur's Gate 3 might lose to Legend of Zelda because, you know, that's what people do. That's what award shows do. They pick the best option, not the winner. They pick the best option. Like, this is what will make the biggest splash. So it's the one that feels the most right. Not necessarily the best one. And the Game Awards have been pretty bad at that lately. So I was afraid that would happen here. But it didn't. It got its day, and I'm super happy for that. It's the last large impact, and we are waiting for the next, right. And thankfully that just happened, right? So we're still kind of waiting for, like, the transformative effects of where does it go from here? Because, you know, the message it sends, it takes a while for it to get there. Unfortunately, the industry is still heading in a bad direction. Xbox and Sony have both made some super bad moves. Lethal Company was one. Oh, you know what? Yeah. Lethal Company is maybe not as much of a hit, not as much as a revolution, but it was still like a huge reaffirming of indie games are where good games are, right? FNAF proved that without a shadow of a doubt. But over time, the best games have been coming from the indie market. And the best indie game out of the last 5 years, well, 4, is Lethal Company. Like, yeah, man, this is the game everyone wants to play. Screw Call of Duty, screw the next Battlefield or whatever the hell you got going on in Call of, Duty's Battle Royale nonsense. I don't need another season of Fortnite. I want this. I want Lethal Company BS shenanigans. This is what I want. Right? But the problem with the indie game winners is that the industry doesn't take notice. Right? Xbox, Sony, Ubisoft, Bethesda, all of them, they don't care if games like Lethal Company do well. They really don't. All they care about is what hurts their bottom line, and Lethal Company doesn't affect them in the slightest. So as good and revolutionary of a game as it should have been, it doesn't really change anything because it doesn't fight against them directly. Baldur's Gate 3, however, shined a flashlight in their eyes and say, hey, pay attention. This is what you should have been making all along. Screw the quadruple A games. Oh my god, don't even get me started on that. Quadruple A games. Like, it's stuff like that that convinces me about the rule of failing upwards. Like, it doesn't deliver that same challenge. And what I'm looking for when I enter one of these things is to, well, have an experience. This is supposed to be harder, or at the It's just, it's so frustrating. It seems like every week now there's another BS thing happening in gaming. Gamergate 2, X-Fi Rush Studio getting closed, the Helldivers 2 PSN fiasco. I mean, God, where does it end? It doesn't end. It never ends because that's where all the money's going. And it's the trend and the backlash against them has become pretty fierce, and it's getting bigger. I just don't know if there's going to be like a moment where they both realize, oh no, we've screwed up, we've got to turn back. Because their latest console launches were failures. Straight up. There is no getting around it. They were failures. It doesn't deliver that same challenge. And what I'm looking for when I enter one of these things is to, well, have an experience. This is supposed to be harder. And it's such a failure that they're still developing games for the PS4 and the Xbox One because everybody has those and nobody has the next generation because of the whole COVID fiasco. It doesn't deliver that same challenge. And what I'm looking for when I enter one of these things is to, well, have an experience. This is supposed to be harder, or at the very least interesting, but Tom Tara doesn't. Perfect. That's what I needed. Oh man, yeah. It really just goes to show. Until somebody makes the next Minecraft or Fortnite and starts buying out all these companies, nothing's gonna change. Like, we're talking about, we need a game industry crash to shake these muscleheads out of their positions. Right, I didn't finish my thought from earlier. Failing upward theory. The idea is that everybody gets promoted at jobs that they're good at until they reach the job that they suck at and they don't get promoted anymore. They just keep that job. So everybody is terrible at their jobs because they got promoted to get to that position and then never got any further because they're bad at their jobs. So the older someone is, the higher on the food chain they are, and the longer they've been at that position, the less you trust them, because it screams the idea of, well, why haven't you left this position in a while? Why are you so old and you're just an acting manager, or you're a lowly manager, so to speak? Now you can argue, yeah, Some developers, some CEOs, they're good at their jobs. They deserve to be the head of their companies. Yada, yada. It's just a theory, and it doesn't apply everywhere. But it's the idea that wherever there is management, there's usually bad management. It's so rare that you actually find good management. Because in systems where the gamers, the developers become their own bosses and work together as a team, like at the studio that made Baldur's Gate 3, the head developer on that is a freaking gamer. He loves games. He's awesome. This guy deserves to be the head of a game studio. And then you look at BS like Sony and Xbox and Bethesda, it's like Todd Howard. It's like, how did you get this job? How? How do you still have this job? Oh, that's right. It's because you made one good game 20 years ago and you've been coasting ever since. I hate Todd Howard. I mean, I don't hate him. I just dislike the idea of him. And I hate what happened with the Sony and Xbox positions. They became so anti-gamer. It's like, you are our customers. We're not part of your community. You're part of ours. And we sell you games. We make games and you buy them. That should not be the message. We make games because we love games. That should be what the studio messages are. And you see all these studios making crap like that, and then they get shut down because Hi-Fi Rush apparently isn't good enough. You know, Sony did the same thing, by the way. Sony did exactly the same thing for the team that made Days Gone. Days Gone did a phenomenal job. Was it a Call of Duty killer? No. Was it the next Last of Us? No. But it was still a solid game and made millions of dollars because it sold millions of copies. It was one of the launch games for the PS4. Why didn't they order a sequel? Well, they shut down the studio that made Days Gone. Why? 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 And that's where all the anger comes from, right? The audacity of the stupidity that you're dealing with. Man, I'm getting worked up. The Tom Tara Deepcroft. Oh my god, I still haven't said Armvale. What the hell's going on? Yes, I know. I can't believe Armvale is... Okay, I think I'm done with Tom Tara Deepcroft. The last thing I have to add is the name of the song playing. So I'll copy these. To do significant kind of too far. Okay. Slumber disturbed. Please don't overwrite anything. Oh, okay. Okay. This should be Slumber Disturbed. Honestly, one of the worst soundtracks in the game. There's nothing to this. I might even make it louder because I can't hear the damn song as it's playing. The Tom Tara Deepcroft. Oh my god, I still haven't said Armvale. What the hell's going on? Yes, I'm gonna make it louder. The Tom Tara Deepcroft. Oh my god, I still haven't said Armvale. What the hell's going on? Yes, I know. I can't believe Armvale is not yet on this list, and don't worry, we'll get to it. But really think about Tom Tara because it's such a This is one of the first 3 dungeons that the gamer plays. These are the dungeons that are introducing you to the concept of dungeon. Okay, so this is negative 6.31. If I were to ever make it big, I'd try to get rid of all the parts wrong with gaming, although it's a future indie dev. I don't know if I could even come close to making that. Yeah, that's it. That's the dream of a lot of developers, I think, right? Everyone hopes that there'll be that next successful story that will just start correcting and fixing the industry. you know, and Epic Games had a chance to do that. They're still in the best position to do it because they have Fortnite and they have Unreal Engine. And in a way, they were doing that with making the Epic Game Store, but they just went about it the wrong way. They made themselves an enemy of everyone. They made everyone work harder to get games, and they made game devs choose sides, which is like, that's not how you should do it. They were making enough money as they were. What they needed to do was to foster their own studios, right? Don't take other studios and force them under your umbrella. Make your own, right? Because the only way you're ever going to fight back against the likes of Xbox and Sony and Bethesda and all them is like, you have to become as powerful as they are, which is like such a tall order. I just turned my mind off for the rest of the dungeon, and I think that's true for a lot of other people as well. In researching the overall opinion of people when it comes, I think it's too loud now, actually. Let me turn that down a tad. Comes to all of these dungeons, Tamtara often found itself on negative lists. And I think that's because people in general just don't appreciate a dungeon like this that's far too simple and devoid of content. So it's no surprise that almost everybody considers this a meaningless excursion. Yeah. I'll go with 8. -8 instead of -6. Just a little softer than what I did. Alright, and with that, we're finally done with Tamtara, dude! Oh god, only took a whole stream. I mean, we were talking about a lot of other stuff at the same time, but supposed to be playing Genshin, but I got hooked on talking about game development. I know, right? It's just, it's too fun to talk about. Right? We care about this stuff, so we like to talk about it. Okay, I think that is an official bow on number 30. So now we can delete all this unneeded footage. And now we move on to number 29. Halatali. The last of F tier. I think I'm going to have to re-record the entire Halatali one, honestly, because I don't know what I was thinking when I recorded this, but I was listening back to it and I was like, ooh, this isn't great. A little closer. This same meaningless excursion. Boom. And this is 29. I think that's a good place to actually end it now that I'm talking about it. So let's get this going. Let's get one listen through to what I have, and then we'll Halatali. Go from there. Holy crap, yes, I know. But let's talk about Halatali first. Let me be honest, I completely forgot this dungeon existed while I was researching this list. I honestly completely blocked it out of my mind. Not because it's a... Make little cuts here and there. I can do at least that. Bad dungeon, but because it's a truly forgettable dungeon. That's why it falls so far down on this list. The abandoned gladiator coliseum. Don't need that section. I've said that way too many times. The abandoned gladiator coliseum. Wow. That was a bad stutter. The abandoned gladiator coliseum training grounds aesthetic is not bad, but there's really nothing else going for it. I mean, it's basic, just basic, just like the tomb or the cave. You know, you got to give me more than that, and it doesn't really feel like that. The lore of Halatali is fine enough. It used to be the training ground for the Gladiators Guild, but here, stop me if you've heard this before, after the Calamity it had to be a guild, but here, but stop me if you've heard this before, after the Calamity it had to be abandoned, and all the creatures inside were left to their doom, except of course they broke out and started eating each other so they could survive, and now has to be cleared out by a group of spunky adventurers. Halatali is such a forgettable dungeon. Just like Tomtara, it's just like, it's a really nothing experience. All three of these bottom tier dungeons are like, I would be okay with never doing them again. Honestly, the cruelty of letting these beasts to their doom, the cruelty of leaving these beasts, the cruelty of letting these beasts to their doom is spunky adventurers. Yeah, I gotta that's what we are. Honestly, the cruelty of leaving these beasts to their doom is pretty potent stuff, but it's not really touched upon. They're just monsters and we're gonna kill them all. Okay. I don't really need that section, but I'll leave it for now. Just in case I can't think of anything else. The structure of Halatali is also very much in question. Perhaps the only dungeon that was more confusing than Thousand Maw's original design was Halatali. I played through the... Is that true? Yeah, that's true. Samael Darkhold is not that confusing anymore. Yeah. Perhaps the only dungeon that was more much in question. Perhaps the only dungeon that was more confusing than Thousand Maw's original design was Halatali. I played through this and legitimately took 3 wrong turns on my first playthrough after years because it's not inherently obvious which direction you need to go. There's a lot of gates, there's a lot of pathways, and unless you know the dungeon by memory, you're not necessarily aware of which one's the right path. That is true, by the way. I got lost 3 times when I replayed this to capture footage. It was super embarrassing. Oh, the dungeon by memory, you're not... The dungeon... Pause is giving me agita. Oh, the dungeon by memory, you're not necessarily aware of which one's the right path. And it'd been such a long time since I've played it, I fell into the same trap. Furthermore, the pulling of the levers to open the next gate is actually a big problem, because for players who don't pull the levers, they'll find that they have to go back through the entire phase of that dungeon to pull all the levers. And there's a lot of them. I think at least 7. There, look that up. It is 5. I think I looked that up right here. I sure did. There's 5 chain winches that have to be pulled in order to get through the phase of that dungeon to pull all the levers. And there's a lot of them. There's 5 chain winches that have to be pulled in order to get through the phase. Some of them will spawn ads and some will spawn treasures. But that mechanic may make people think that they don't need to pull it. So they'll probably ignore it, go forward, and realize, oh crap, the door's closed, gotta go back and close them. The design of barring the way is not a bad one, but it has to be used correctly. You have to bar the way in the community to say, hey, you need to go back and find something in this immediate vicinity, not the entire phase of the dungeon. That's too mean. And one of the bigger weaknesses of early Realm Reborn dungeons was using mechanics that were quite outdated and would not stand the test of time. Now, as far as bosses go, Halatali actually is a step up from the previous two dungeons. Firemane legitimately is a cool boss. I'm going to cut it right there. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I think I'm going to cut out this whole section right here. I'll mark it just so I can review it. But otherwise, I think that's a good place to stop. All right, but you better save. Yo. Whew. Saved. Yay, we got one more done. Only 29 to go. Let's go. I'm so good at this. Okay, so we will pick this back up tomorrow. I'm probably going to work on it more tonight, but you know, need a chance to go eat my food, get some drink, somehow escape this room of 90 degrees, and I'll let you guys go for the rest of the night. Thanks for hopping along, Blizzard. I know it was a long night. I hope I was a entertaining background noise. So thanks very much for all the input and whatnot, and I will see the rest of you tomorrow. If you have more to talk about, I'll be in the Discord for the rest of the night. I'll be working on this probably, or melting into a puddle of goo. So you all enjoy yourselves. You have a great rest of your night, and be good people. Good night.